Testing. Testing, testing.
All right, good evening to everyone. I'd like to call our meeting to order. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 27th, 2022 meeting of the City Council, the Falls Church City Council. We're pleased you're all able to join us, particularly those in person here with us this evening. I'm going to ask if you could all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, Madam Clerk, will you call roll, please?
Yes, sir. Ms. Conley,
Here.
Mr. Duncan,
Here.
Ms. Hardy,
Here.
Ms. Leon,
Here.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott,
Here.
Mr. Schneider,
Here.
and Mayor Tarter.
Here.
And Mr. Schneider is joining us virtually, so there is a motion that you all need to do to allow that.
All right, well, let's see if someone will make a motion.
I move that City Council approve electronic participation by Dave Schneider in tonight's meeting for medical reasons pursuant to the City Council's policy on participation in meetings through electronic means as adopted by Resolution 2022-02.
All right.
Second.
We have a second, a motion and a second. All in favor? Or let's do, the clerk wants to do a roll call vote, so let's do it by roll call.
Yes, Ms. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Hardy,
Yes.
Ms. Leon,
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott,
Yes.
and Mayor Tarter.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, council.
All right, thank you. Let's go on to adoption of the meeting agenda.
Mr. I move to adopt the meeting agenda.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. There are no proclamations or special presentations this evening, correct, Madam Clerk?
That's correct.
All right. How about any oaths of office to administer to new board and commission members?
No, sir.
Okay, let's keep moving. Let's move on to the business receipt of public comment. Would you start with receipt of public comments, please?
Yes, would you like me to review the written comments?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Bike Falls Church, along with the following members of the group, wrote to ask that bicycling safety be prioritized in budgets, planning, studies, and staff resourcing. William Below of North Lee Street also asked that safety for walking and other micromobility activities be prioritized. Did I say he was North Lee Street? He is. Alexander Conrad joined in to ask for the same. He lives on West Broad Street. Tom Marsh of 1909 Armand Street also chimed in on bicycling safety. And Brian McCracken asked that growth at W&OD road crossings be trimmed for better visibility. Judy Felgar wrote in support of a 20 mile per hour speed limit. And Monica Fries of 415 Poplar Drive wrote in opposition to a 20 mile per hour speed limit. W. Frederick Thompson of 502 West Broad Street provided comments on proposed transitional zone, T-zone changes, and he wrote on behalf of the Broadway Condominium T-zone Task Force. VPAS wrote in opposition to proposed changes to T-zones. VPAS also provided comments on the Park Avenue Great Streets project. That's what we have for tonight.
All right, thank you very much. And we also have some folks in the audience who I suspect want to speak as well, and you're certainly most welcome to, each and every one of you. The clerk is going to go ahead and call your name. If you could, when you approach the podium, please state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for other speakers so we can get through everyone tonight. I'm going to let the clerk go ahead and call each speaker, and you can come to the podium right there, and you'll have a little light that'll tell you when your time is expiring. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. First person we have is Charlie Lord of 222 Little Fall Street.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As Celeste, Ms. Heath said, I'm Charlie Lord. I live at 222 Little Falls Street. It is my first time appearing before the city council, so just by way of quick background, I moved here with my wife and my now 5-year-old son in April of 2021. My son just started at Mount Daniel. However, I've lived in Falls Church on and off for the last 35 years. My family moved here in the mid-'80s. I attended the public schools from 2nd grade until graduating from then George Mason High School. I've lived in a variety of cities around the country, but mostly I've lived in Falls Church or I've lived in the District of Columbia, so I've never gone too far, and I'm very happy to be here. I have a strong knowledge, of course, of the city, and the city is, in my view, a really unique place. It's a place that truly does have a small, close-knit community feel with the social attributes of a large town where people really know each other, a low-stress lifestyle, excellent schools, but at the same time being smack dab in the middle of one of the most diverse, cosmopolitan, urbane, metropolitan areas in the entire country. So truly a unique place and one that I feel strongly is worth fighting for and protecting. So the purpose of my appearance here today is to provide the city with an initial installation of a petition that I did draft that concerns plans to develop what the city has called the City Hall Plaza project in front of City Hall. The petition is a petition in opposition to that plan. The location at issue is, as you all are familiar with, the triangular area in front of City Hall bounded by Park Avenue to the south and Little Fall Street to the east. The current use of that parkland is that it is natural parkland. It's gently sloping, grassy areas. They have mature trees there. It's used for picnicking, informal gathering, child's play. It's used for a variety of informal gatherings that the city has, most recently on Saturday for the grounds for the Plein Air Festival. The contemplated future use, according to documents that I've received from the city, would be to install a landscaped Sorry.
That's okay. Have you all heard anything I said in the
We
last 2
have,
minutes
just start
and
over
15
again, it's
seconds?
okay.
Sorry about that.
I'll choose not to reiterate my history with the city. But the contemplated use would be essentially to build a landscaped element that would have a large impervious brick surface surrounded by stationary benches, lighting bollards, a brick path that runs through the parkland up to the center of City Hall, and then there would be, as I see it from city documents, some sort of City Hall logo kind of embedded into the middle of the circular area. I've described it. I know I'm probably short on time, but to let you know, I did gather a petition together. The petition, which I'll provide to the clerk after I speak tonight, provides a summary of current uses, contemplated uses, also references the $235,000 the city documents show would be the initial installation and consulting fees associated with this particular project. I was out there about 2 hours on Saturday morning informing people about the project and then asking their views of it and soliciting signatures in support of the petition. I did receive 46 signatures in the time that I was out there. I was interrupted for a while because I had former classmates who were here for the 25th high school reunion who waylaid my time and took away from it. The comment section here does indicate the reason why many people were opposed. I should say I got 46 signatures. No one stated to me, maybe they didn't think they would get a good hearing, but no one stated to me any support for the contemplated use. Thank you. I'll hand up the petition.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Technical difficulties, sorry guys. Yes, we have Andrew Olison next up, and then following we have Mike Doyle, who is joining us virtually. So when you start, if you can just state your name and address, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, welcome.
Good to see you all again. My name is Andrew Olson. I live at 615 Lincoln Avenue. I'm here today on behalf of a small portion of Bike Falls Church, where I have 150 odd members on our mailing list now, up from, I think, 140 about a week ago. And about 10-20% of us are here to speak with you. We have come to share our stories about why we care about bicycling in the city, and come to help you to understand that this is not a niche issue. It's not a tomorrow issue. It's not a we've got time issue. It's a right now thing that affects the shape and feeling of our city. You all have delivered really impressive results on things that are far bigger than bike lanes. You've built a new high school, a new library. You've got us through a crazy pandemic. We've got new developers, lots of new residences, new businesses. It's a really exciting time in the city. You've set really great goals for our city. You read the 2040 vision, you read the comprehensive plan, the small area plans. They all talk about this vibrant walking and biking centric place where there's no more car trips. Car trips are flat from 2014. These are really exciting goals that you've set for our city, and right now they're still just words on a page. We're encouraged by your recent discussions with 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, of the quick build infrastructure to maybe get some bike lanes going. about the Virginia Tech student study, but we want these ideas to lead to action. We appreciate the progress you made on bike issues over the past 5 years. The dual trails, not done yet, but a really, really amazing piece of infrastructure. The bike parking and new development and the bike racks have been great, and you brought Capital Bike Share here. And I know you tried to bring scooters here, but probably wrong time. But those projects still don't address many of the fundamental issues with bicycle safety here. A safer WNOD is just a safer highway through our city that people aren't getting off and shopping and living here. Our neighbors can't get to the WNOD on the bike safely. And we haven't made much progress in the last 5 years. We've had other priorities, but it's time to get back to it. We've made no reductions in bicycle or pedestrian injuries in the last 5 years. The bicycle master plan was supposed to be implemented, all done by 2025, and staff's report says now we have to wait till the 2050s. We built no new bike lanes in the past 5 years. There's been no increase in bicycle mode share for commuting in the last 5 years. Capital Bike Share, from the data I've seen, usage has declined since we installed it in 2019. The system overall is up. 8 years after Mobility for All Modes was adopted, where we said we're going to be a bike-friendly community, we still haven't done it yet. And I think we'd score okay, but not great. So we love your support in getting there. We know that this is what you've said in your documents you want, and we're here to tell you and share with you why this matters to us. People of all ages, all different backgrounds, new residents, people who grew up here, people who grew up here in the 60s and 70s. And as we submitted in our public comment, we'd like you to do six little things. Read Mobility for All Modes and the Bike Master Plan. Come for a ride with us. See how it feels. Implement the Bicycle Master Plan. It is city policy, so it's not a do we want to or not. It's like the streetscape standards. We should just do it. Designate a bike and pedestrian champion in each department. This is a great way to have accountability. Start building some bicycle lanes. Protect a bicycle lane. We just want to see some progress. We're not asking for the world. We just want to start to see some momentum. And you've got a bike infrastructure line item. You've got some Founders Road 2 sidewalk money. These are great opportunities to fund the budget and deliver this. And finally, we're making a lot of our bicycle routes 25 miles an hour instead of 20 miles an hour. If cars and people are going to share the road, we should take an action that we can take now to make it safer. But don't take it from me. Love to hear from these groups. They've inspired me to do this, and you've all inspired me to do this with bringing me onto CACT, and every document I read just makes me think, man, this is what the city wants. We just need to go do it. So thank you. Sorry for running over.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes, we have Mike Doyle, who I believe is online. We're going to followed by Jeremiah Lowry, who's in person. Mr. Doyle, are you on the Teams meeting?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Welcome.
And I'll
Okay.
start your 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you get to 30 seconds so you can do your sum up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk this evening. So my name is Mike Doyle. I'm with the Northern Virginia Families for Safe Streets. We are a pedestrian-focused group about street safety, except in Arlington, where we also advocate for pedestrian and bike. But we have chapters in Fairfax and Alexandria, and they have active bike groups like you have in your community. So we just focus on pedestrian safety. We have about 1,200 members in Northern Virginia, and we do a lot of advocacy about street safety, the consequences of cars or vehicles crashing into pedestrians or bicyclists or any vulnerable road user. You may hear a lot of statistics about how, according to the Department of Transportation, a vehicle traveling at 20 miles an hour could kill 1 in 10 pedestrians, and at 40 miles an hour, it's 9 in 10 pedestrians. So as we say, speed kills, speed maims. It's exponential. What those statistics don't talk about are the consequences at 20 miles an hour of what happens to the other 9 survivors. I'm a survivor. A car crashed into me in 2016, December 7th, my little Pearl Harbor Day, 2016. And the impact of the 5-ton SUV crashing into me caused my my body to fall into the hood of the car, and my forehead was, it made a dent in the hood of the SUV. Just think about what a head denting a piece of metal like that. So it took me a long time to recover. And if a child or an elderly person that's frail, may not recover, or they may not be so fortunate. We have members in our group that have survived, but even worse than I, and been crippled both mentally and physically forever.
Sir, you're at 30 seconds. Sum up time.
We have, so the common equation is speed. We strongly urge the Falls Church to reduce speeds at least 20 miles an hour. We advocate this throughout the Northern Virginia. We also advocate speed cameras, but that's another question. But reduction of speeds will save lives. Thank you for the chance to talk.
And in person, we have Jeremiah Lowry, followed by Andrea Comont.
Welcome.
Welcome. Sorry, I just had dinner, so I'm clearing my throat. Thank you, council members and the mayor, for having me this evening. On behalf of the Washington Area Bicycle Association, more than 7,500 members in the Washington region, I write to say that WABA is here to support you and Bike Falls Church, who is in the house tonight, woohoo, and your efforts to make biking safe and accessible to all residents. There are passionate bicycle riders in and around Falls Church, and many more people who would like to ride if they felt encouraged and safe. For years, WABA and FAB have worked with these people and the Fairfax and Arlington governments to help create the improving bicycle infrastructure you see in those jurisdictions. The classes that are held regularly to educate kids and adults on bicycling, and the events that help build a bicycle-friendly culture. Falls Church lacked any advocacy engagement with council until this year, but we're so glad that Bike Falls Church has taken up that mission. This place could be amazing for bicycling and as an important link between our neighboring jurisdictions. We've seen elsewhere that it does not take a lot of time or money to make our streets safer for bicyclists and other multimodal modes of transportation, but it does take commitment and a willingness to learn. Your city goals are shifting mode share away from cars and reducing injuries on the road, reducing carbon emissions, and maintaining a village character all sound very much in line with encouraging bicycling. Unfortunately, traffic deaths are on the rise in Virginia. So now is the time for Falls Church to step up and be an example for the rest of the state, to show that it is possible to have a sustainable, safe, and connected transportation system for all road users. Let's get to work, and we look forward to work with you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk?
Thanks. We have Andrea Comont, followed by Tiffany Murphy. And if you can state your name and address when you join us. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Tartar, members of council. I'm Andrea Comont, 423 Sheriff Avenue. I grew up here in the City of Falls Church, and I've been raising my boys here for the last 10 years. I serve on our planning commission. I know you all pretty well. You know I like biking. You know I bike around the city. I wanted to share a little bit about kind of some of the bigger picture thoughts that I have on bicycling and why we should support it here in the city. Our cities have been built around cars for decades. It's all that most of us have ever known. In many parts of the country, having a car is a basic requirement to participate in society. This was a choice we made 70 years ago because of the way we designed and built our cities, but we don't have to keep making it. Falls Church City is small enough that we can choose another way. It's important to note that not every community has this choice. I think we're lucky in this regard. City residents already do not have to rely on cars to live their daily lives here in the little city. They can walk and bike to the grocery store, the library, the post office, city hall, the metro, medical offices, restaurants, and retail. This walkability and bikeability makes Falls Church a really great place to live. It's one of the main reasons why people want to move here, and it's why they stay. It's what many of us love about living here. It's magical. It's unique, both inside the Beltway and in the U.S. It's a huge selling point for the city. but it could be so much better, and it needs to be much, much safer. We've done a lot, I think, of the easy stuff. We put in bike racks, we required bike parking in new developments, we even brought bike share to the city. But this will all be just window dressing if we don't start doing some of the hard stuff too. We must create better infrastructure for walking and biking. We need to make physical changes to our streets to take away space from cars and slow them down. We can do this by adding protected bicycle lanes, narrowing our intersections, and raising crossings. We need a network of protected bicycle lanes that includes a safe connection to the secondary campus for our students and better connections to the W&OD trail to entice through riders into our downtown. We're at an inflection point, I think. We can continue to maintain the status quo with the needs of cars prioritized over the needs of all other modes of travel, whether that's walking, biking, or transit, or we can make changes to our streets to level the playing field with cars. I think we should double down on what makes Falls Church unique by reimagining our town as a people-first place. We already got a glimpse of what reallocating space from cars to people can do. You have an agenda item tonight to extend zoning flexibility to allow empty parking spaces to be used for outdoor dining. This was a pandemic-driven change, but it was incredibly successful and popular. It brought more vibrancy and revenues to the city. That's what a people-first place can bring. I believe we have an opportunity to make Falls Church an even better place to live and a truly unique community inside the Beltway, where residents have a real choice in how they get around and can do so safely. I hope our council also sees this opportunity and that you will all help us make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tiffany Murphy, followed by Kevin O'Brien. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Murphy, and I live at 211 West Columbia here in Falls Church. And I want to second everything that's been said here tonight about the encouraging biking and making it a people first. I think Andrea spoke exceptionally well about that. That is why I'm here. I've been in and out of Falls Church over the last many years. I have 2 children at the middle and high school. And I love the concept that this is a people-first city. It is absolutely why I'm here. And I challenge the council and all of us to think about what is our future and what do we really believe we want in our future of Falls Church. I want a city that's green. I'm also a VPIS member. I want a city that's green. I want a city that's accessible by people. I want a city that is strong, healthy, a strong community where people know each other and we're all getting out and enjoying ourselves. And overarchingly, that it's safe. So my kids are biking to friends' houses. They are biking to school, and I am worried. I am a worried parent. I am here because I am worried, and I am stressed about my child getting to school in a way that should be healthy. I am encouraging my children to bike, and they're taking responsibility and going to school, and yet they're having to cross some of the most dangerous roads that we have where the highest percentage of accidents are happening. And it is almost insane that we do not have a safe crossing from right at the high school. So that has got to be changed. One of the things I really want to do is also talk about not only, there are a lot of big challenges. That crossing to the high school is a major challenge. There are a lot of major challenges. But do the things that you can now, the low-hanging fruit, and there are a lot of them. Andrea listed off a number of them. The other is bicycle master plan requirements. It's not optional. It's council policy. Erect the bicycle lanes, fund the bike infrastructure, use that money, that concept of doing a corner here in front of the city hall. One, as a VPIS member, I want that to remain green and lovely. It's part of our cover. And I'd love to use all the money that people are thinking about spending there on doing the safety bike lanes. So let's do that. And essentially all those 6 things that our representative mentioned are so critical. So in sum, I really challenge everybody to think about, what do you want in 50 years? What do you want Falls Church to look like? I want it to look green. I want it to look accessible. I want people out there using it. You know our kids are going to be on electric scooters and using all forms of electronic mobility types of transportation. Let's make it safe for them now and create that world that we want to be then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kevin O'Brien, followed by Evelyn Hackle. And please state your name and address, please.
Hi there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for having us this evening. My name is Kevin O'Brien. I'm not a resident of Falls Church. I live in D.C. But I am here on behalf of the Washington Area Bicyclist Association and our thousands of members throughout the capital region. Safer streets and better places to bike happen when community members and their elected officials get together and decide to put people and people-centered street design first. And that's exactly what several folks in the city of Falls Church did earlier this year, launching Bike Falls Church and bringing together this amazing group tonight to advocate for better bicycling in their corner of Northern Virginia. WABA is here tonight to emphasize that while small, Falls Church has an opportunity to be a leader in the capital region when it comes to bicycle use, bicycle infrastructure, and bicycle and pedestrian safety. No city is an island, and what happens here affects and can meaningfully benefit the region as a whole. We are here tonight to encourage the council to act, not to rip up all the roads and to alter the fabric of what makes the little city such a special place, but to take small steps that build on what makes this such a special place. People move here for the promise of walkable, tree-lined, close-knit neighborhoods where their kids can roam free. Let's deliver on that promise. The challenges that Falls Church and the region face, congestion, affordability, rising pedestrian and bicyclist deaths, and a rapidly changing climate are immense. But we believe strongly that the bicycle can and should be a part of the solution today and tomorrow. Let's have the city of Falls Church thrive in new and exciting ways. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evelyn Hackle, followed by Tim Stevens.
Hello, my name's Evelyn Hackle. I live at 3339 Mansfield Road. That's just outside of the city limits of Falls Church and across Seven Corners. Today, I'd like to highlight the needs of younger riders and family riding and the importance of spot improvements. I've been peripherally involved with the supporting the bicycle master plan in Falls Church, and since 2004, when I first came to this area, I've seen places that I thought were death-defying places to walk or ride become safe places that I ride with my daughter now. And one of those changes was Seven Corners itself. And that combined with my daughter being able to be on her own wheels instead of in a trailer has completely shifted our discretionary spending habits. My daughter loves riding into Falls Church. She likes the Little City Creamery. She likes to go to Bolero. She loves to go to Victory Comics. We used to go to the Complete Strategist. We've been to Northside Social, Brown's Hardware. And these are places that we go to several times a year or even as much as monthly when the weather is nice, that we only would go to once a year or once every few years when she was in the trailer, because getting here by trail took 7 miles, whereas it's 3 miles when we come up the sidewalks on Route 7. And for, people who bike maybe 20 miles an hour, that's not a big deal, but we've instrumented our bikes and we love data, and we've found that our daughter bikes at about 8 miles an hour on a trail. She can only bike about 6 miles an hour on a sidewalk because we're weaving around those telephone poles and there's unevenness in the sidewalk, and all of that slows the rider down. And for myself, when I'm riding without her, I'm about 10 miles an hour on the trail. I'm about 8 miles an hour if I go to a sidewalk. The roads, unless they have a bike lane, are out of the question. So I love to see the improvements that have happened, and I'd like to encourage you to continue making improvements. Even small changes can bring more people into the city and make things safer for the children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Tim Stevens, followed by Brandon Blakely.
Evening, Tim Stevens, 106 Gresham Place. And I wanted to say thank you to the energetic folks that have pulled together Bike Falls Church. I've been biking in the city now for over 30 years, and this has been a missing piece to this aspect of civic advocacy. So I'm very thankful for those folks that have pulled this together. And I also wanted to mention, for your benefit, this book, Cycling for Sustainable Cities. It's by Professor Ralph Buehler, who, as several of you probably know, he is the professor that's pulling together the studio class that's going to be updating the city's bike master plan. So this says it much better than certainly anything I could say, and it's very well researched. There's over 500 footnotes. It's done in a very peer-reviewed kind of a style, so definitely recommend it for your reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon Blakely, followed by Justine Underhill.
Hi, I'm Brandon Blakely, and I moved to Falls Church about a year ago. Urban planning is among the most enduring decisions of city governments, and I urge you to include a protected bike lane in the redevelopment plans for Park Ave, even though this would imply replacing some on-street parking spots. To emphasize, a Shero is not good enough. It does very little to embolden people to choose biking over driving. The primary objection I've heard from detractors so far is that this would be bad for business, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Case after case and study after study have shown that replacing on-street parking with bike lanes tends to have a positive economic impact. And I can personally attest to this. With better bike infrastructure, I would visit the businesses along Park Ave much more often. And I'm sure that many of the many bike trips along the W&OD trail would too. But beyond economic considerations, encouraging non-car trips through better public infrastructure has health and environmental consequences as well. By now, we all know the negative impact that burning fossil fuels has had on the environment. But even if we were somehow to magically replace all cars with electric vehicles today, cars would still have a negative environmental impact and a negative impact on our health. A landmark study recently showed that brake pad dust damages lungs as much as diesel exhaust fumes. This is just one among many other externalities that cars impose on others. Urban area residents are increasingly demanding alternatives to driving everywhere. And as the outcome of this project will likely persist for decades after its completion, please seriously consider how the residents of the future of Falls Church will want to navigate our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justine Underhill, followed by Jeremy Schneider.
Hi, my name is Justine, and I recently moved to 513 Greenwich Street last year. I live about 6 blocks away from here, and I love the idea of being able to bike everywhere I go, whether it's to get groceries or even come to the city council meeting. But today I had to drive to this building because I do not feel safe biking on Falls Church city streets. Protected bike lanes make it so that riders of all ages and abilities can bike safely. I've biked on streets with Sheros, and I've been honked at and harassed by drivers for simply existing on their streets. And they also tried to speed around. A Shero does little to make streets safer for bicyclists. It does little to make streets safer for children. We have the opportunity right now to do better for our future. So I urge you to include protected bike lanes in the Park Avenue project and on others going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Schneider, followed by David Bloomgarden.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Jeremy Schneider. I'm a 25-year resident of Falls Church. I live at 119 South Oak Street, little ways from what used to be TJ. I what's Oak Street Elementary now. My daughter walked there. My daughter, I walked her to Mount Daniel. But through her entire high school career, I don't think she ever rode her bike or walked to George Mason because it's just too scary. It's hard to cross the street. It's unsafe. And I'd like the city to be more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. So I would urge you to, as others have, install a protected bike lane on Park Street. I strongly support the 20 mile per hour reduction or 20 mile an hour speed limit. And I would like to encourage you to follow up on any ways to get kids to be able to ride their bikes or walk to school safely. And somebody brought up the WNOD and integration with our, more integration with our community. I think if we made more easy paths off of it to businesses with more wayfinding signs that would help bring business and tax revenue. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have David Bloomgarden, followed by Joyce Migdal. If you can state your name and your address before you start. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is David Bloomgarden. I live at 504 Greenwich Street. This is my first time addressing the council, so I want to appreciate the council for this opportunity. I've lived here over 20 years. I'm a bicycle commuter for work, and I've bicycled with my children, who I raised here. Bicycling has become progressively more dangerous in the city. I'm less inclined to use services, go to stores on my bicycle as I was in the past. And for this reason, I'm here to ask the City Council to implement and prioritize safe mobility in the Bike Master Plan. We have to begin somewhere, and I think that starts with some funding within whatever constraints you have. Let's just begin and find a project that can show we're serious about this. I would recommend beginning with a protected bike lane along Park Avenue, because I think that could also be a way to eventually build a safe route for bicycling to the school. I know there's a lot of speakers, so I'll stop here and thank you again.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Tarter and members of council. My name's Joyce Migdal, and I live in Falls Church City on West Falls Way. For many residents, students, and teachers, West Street is a required road on a bicycle commute to either MEH Middle School or Meridian High School, and also to connect to the WNOD Trail, and in addition to be able to get to current and future commercial centers near the schools. With the construction of Founders Row, the city eliminated a short shoulder on West Street, and they made it into a traffic lane to allow cars to, a double lane to allow cars to make a right-only lane and then a anything lane at that West Street and WNOD intersection. The shoulder was a de facto bike lane that allowed reasonably safe direct access, at least for that short piece of the path, which is to say I'm getting more nervous too when I've been riding, and I'm getting more nervous too, like Mr. Bloomgarden said. Okay. In addition to eliminating that de facto short bike path, the bump outs on Highland and Oak Street have pushed bicyclists into the traffic lanes, making the commute scarier for me and others. The West Street bump outs have been repaired at least a couple of times in their relatively young life. And I want the city to consider when the next time it needs repair, reconfiguring the bump out so that the right side of the bump out will allow a path for a bike to go over it while still retaining, that the car on the left side, has to slow down and sees the bump out. And I also hope you will consider raised crosswalks at the Greenwich intersection, and I skipped Greenwich and Highland, raised crosswalks, because what's happening now is you see a bike in the road, and I'm the traffic calming. My bike, my body on my bike is the traffic calming instead of a sleeping policeman, which is what they call, a raised crosswalk or a speed hump. It's there all the time, and it's slowing traffic to hopefully the new speed limit of 20 miles an hour. And this would match what's been done on the other side in Arlington and Fairfax, where they have speed humps. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have George Lee, followed by Sarah Belden. And if you can state your name and address, that would be appreciated.
Thanks for having me for this opportunity. My name is George Lee. I'm a resident at 419 Rollins Street. My family moved here, my wife, 2 kids, 7-year-old and an 11-year-old, 6 years ago. And one of the things that we really love about Falls Church City is really the size of the school district. It's relatively small compared to other school districts, which means our kids are walking or biking distance away from every single one of their friends, which is a really beautiful thing. Having grown up in a small community in the UK, I appreciate having that. And this is the first time living in the States after 11 years that I've felt at home. And it's because of the community that's here. Every year before school starts, I host a kids road cycling safety course, teaching them how to position themselves on the road, how to signal, when to go on the sidewalks, when not to go on the sidewalks, and then ride their route from their home to school, pairing them up with other kids so they can ride as a group safely to school. This year, our 11-year-old started at Mary Ellen Henderson, which is a fantastic resource for the city. It's a beautiful school. But getting from the W&D trail to Mary Ellen Henderson is terrifying for me as a parent. The safest route I could find, and I've been riding my bike since, 1992. I work for Conti's Bike Shop, and I'm an avid cyclist. You have to go through a parking lot at Birch Broad, or you go down Route 7 on the sidewalk. And if you haven't ever ridden on a sidewalk before, kids are a lot smaller than adults. They're often a lot lower than the fence lines. So driveways become incredibly dangerous for kids to cross over. They're not going to go in Route 7, so they're going through a parking lot, which is also a terrible place to ride a bike as a kid. Then the safest route is actually around the back of Giant. There's a small service road that gets to the crosswalk to the school. All of that is quite sketchy. And as the days get darker in the evenings and the light gets worse, I'm not feeling particularly confident about my kids doing that. So I'd like, what everybody has said already tonight is fantastic. Segregated bike lanes were one of the best things introduced into London that improved cycling safety, increased the economics of the local businesses, and made areas of the local city available to other local commuters. The difference in European cities, like the one I grew up in London, once cycling infrastructure was in place and traffic calming measures were put in and lower speed limits were established, was enormous. And being such a small city, there's a huge opportunity to be a thought leader for the local area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Sarah Belden, followed by Richard Klein.
Hi, I'm Sarah Belden. I've lived in the city over 40 years, and I've been biking the whole time on 300 West Rosemary Lane. And I bike into D.C. And it's sort of interesting because I grew up in Manhattan, and so that's where I first learned to bike, and that's where you can get most places faster by bike than most any other way. So I've always been a strong advocate of use your bike to get places. And I do think that around the city, for someone who's biked all their life and grew up in Manhattan, the roads don't scare me so much. But when I want to bring friends with me, they really would appreciate having protected bike lanes on Park Avenue. And I've watched, when I go into D.C., it's just amazing how much better it is, and I feel safer riding in D.C., where they've got these protected bike lanes, most recently on 15th Street. It's great. And it's worth taking out some parking to put in protected bike lanes on Park Avenue, and also Hillwood is another one where I don't get the bike trails there at all. It seems like it's there, and then you're supposed to cross Annandale somehow and get out into, I feel like it's there more to slow the traffic than to help the bikes. And I remember before when Hillwood used to be 4 lanes, and then they added parking and made it 2 lanes, but hey, instead of so much parking, how about a protected bike lane? Because Seven Corners is another place that's kind of handy to get to. And West Street also, which is, we go on a lot and go to the school. My kids did bike to George Mason and walk to TJ at the time, but I think it's so important for the environment. It's where we're moving electric bikes, scooters, and you need to make it safer so more people will do it. And definitely, rather than spending money on making a plaza around City Hall, use it to make bikes more friendly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Richard Klein, and then Andrew and Max Fay.
Hi, Richard Klein, Falls Church City resident at 603 West Falls Way. Been living there for over 20 years. I'm here to ask for greater transparency and public engagement whenever the city is considering measures that would potentially restrict bicycle access to public spaces. During bridge construction over Route 29 on the W&OD Trail, 2 no bicycle signs were installed by the city at the entrances to the public parking lots at Fire Station 6 near the bridge. Even if the city thought that the signs were needed because of the temporary bike detours that were installed around the bridge construction, the city should have published its plan to ban the bikes from those parking lots and should have welcomed public comment about it. And the city should have removed the no bike signs soon after the bridge construction was completed and the detours ended, but it didn't. When I asked when the signs would be removed, I was told that they were permanent because of safety concerns. It seems like the city decided that the best way to protect bicyclists from being injured was to ban bicyclists. Fortunately, I found people in Arlington County who had the expertise to know that banning bikes from those public parking lots was improper, and they had the ability to convince the right people in Falls Church to take those signs down. The decision to make the no bike signs, the decision to remove the no bike signs was made in July of 2021. Later, I learned that the signs would not be removed, but replaced. I don't know what the final state of the signage in those parking lots will be because, to my knowledge, the plans for those lots have not been made public. I would like to know what signs are planned for those parking lots, and more broadly, I request openness and accountability from Public Works about their projects. Thanks.
Thank you.
And now we have Andrew and Max Fay, followed by Joseph Shirazi.
Hello here.
Welcome.
Come here. Stay right here. So we are not going to take the full 6 minutes that we might be able to get, but we are Andrew Fay, and this is Max Fay, and we live at 3061 Shadeland Drive, just outside the city of Falls Church. Biking is, without a doubt, Max's favorite activity in the entire world. Over the last 3 years, we have 7,600 miles on our bike, and we are through the city of Falls Church at least weekly. We would patronize far more businesses in the city of Falls Church were we able to go down Route 7 or navigate Hillwood or Annandale Road more safely. As it currently stands, it is simply not very safe. I ride a very large bike with Max. It is not extraordinarily maneuverable, and I hope that you prioritize bike infrastructure to improve the lives of the people in Falls Church and the businesses in Falls Church, and I greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do you think Max would like a pen? We have a pen we could give Max. All right, thanks for coming up. Madam Clerk?
Yes, next we have Joseph Shirazi, followed by Luther Swift.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, everybody else who came out tonight because they're passionate about their kids getting to school safely, about visiting local businesses safely, and about having a lower transportation footprint on our environment. I swore to God in 2020 that I would take a more active role in Safer Streets advocacy after my friend Jim Pagels was killed on his bike riding home from his first appointment to get a COVID vaccine. The last thing that he said to anyone was posting on Twitter that he was afraid of a roundabout that he had to ride through to get to his appointment because he didn't feel like it was safe to go on his bike. The time to act for safe infrastructure is now. The Park Street plan right now is a 7-year development plan. It does not take 7 years to build a bike lane. I've been saying that same thing, that it doesn't take 7 years to build a bike lane all summer at several city council meetings. The amount of time I've been saying that is actually longer than it takes to build a bike lane. 2 weeks ago, Bike Falls Church had another event that was more of a community fun event, and we all rode to Little Falls Street and Great Falls Street, and with chalk and white tape mocked up what a bike lane would look like on Little Falls where the WOD crosses it, and on Great Falls leading up to the light on the north side of the WOD trail. Together, both of those took about 20 minutes, and it was really fun and amazing to see people of all ages, children, elderly, just everybody contributing and riding safely up and down the street. I'd like to live in a city where people can meet their needs without needing a car, and to do that safely, we need to prioritize infrastructure for that right now. When most of the people in this room were children, you could probably get to school safely on a bike. And I just don't think that's true anymore because cars have gotten faster, cars have gotten bigger, and there's simply more of them. And this is a very serious, development issue across the region. As some other people have mentioned that traffic deaths are rising in Northern Virginia. We have to tackle it. We don't have time to waste. And I would just ask you to please prioritize everything on the letter that we sent to council this evening, and really take the bike master plan seriously here. The last point I'll just reiterate is it does not take 7 years to build a bike lane. We can do it in a weekend. We can have these things, and there's clearly a will based on the number of people that are here this evening to see these things done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Luther Swift, followed by Martha Cooper. And if you can state your name and address when you join us. Oh. Is Mr. Swift not here? Martha Cooper, are you ready to? Oh, thank you.
Hi, I'm Martha Cooper, and I live at 207 South Virginia Avenue in Falls Church. And I enjoy biking, and today I was biking along Maple, and I saw the proposed what you call them, roundabouts that have been proposed at Maple and Park, and I don't know how a bicyclist is supposed to safely go through that kind of area. And so I am very concerned about this plan to make roundabouts where you are forcing a bicycle to go into a car lane to either go straight forward or to turn left. So That's one of my concerns. I do appreciate bike lanes, and I hope that we can see plenty more of them up here. And traffic signals also are another area, and currently at South Virginia and Route 7, the traffic signal seems to be working well, but at other times there have been times when there was not ample time that allowed pedestrians and bicyclists to cross Route 7. So I thank you for the work that you'll be doing on our behalf, on all of our behalfs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Emily Dockery, followed by Anne Marie Hurd. Sorry for the surprise.
That's okay. Hi, my name is Emily Dockery. I currently live at 6416 South Street, which is just right at Seven Corners. But my family is one of the many foreign service families that moved into Falls Church. And my family moved in the 90s, and I grew up on 305 Southwest Street. So I did do some walking to school. There's some big sidewalks there, but I was never comfortable biking to school. And there's a wonderful W&OD trail that bisects the city, and it's fabulous, but it sort of goes away from the high school, and it's hard to get off and get to it. So I never felt able to use that to get to school. And I am a casual biker, and so I'm not as brave as some bikers out there. And we risk a lot getting out onto the streets, and it'd be great if Falls Church helped protect those streets and welcome bikers. And as a pedestrian, whenever I'm on a sidewalk in the U.S., I don't begrudge a biker being on the sidewalk because I know it's dangerous on the street. But if you want to be a walkable city and a bikeable city, there needs to be room on the street for bikes, and they need to be protected so that the sidewalks can be full of people as well. And I'd just like to thank you for your time and thank everyone else for organizing this. I really believe that Falls Church has a lot of passionate people in it, and you guys all have a lot of good ideas and a lot of good plans, and you want this to be a great place to live. So I'm hoping that you prioritize safe biking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Anne Marie Hurd, followed by Dave Gustafson.
Good evening. I'm Anne Marie Vid. I live at 805 Hillwood Avenue, and I've lived in the city of Falls Church for about 20 years, over 20 years. And I can echo all of the things that people have said tonight. I love to ride my bike, but I often don't because I don't feel safe. It hasn't gotten any better in the 20 years that I've been here, and I'm hoping that you all will take the plan seriously, implement it quickly, because we have been waiting for a long time for this to happen. And there are so many good things that come with more bikes on the roads. And I'm thinking especially for kids and young people, mental health, physical health, environment, it's all improved by biking. And the other thing to think about is social cohesion that happens when you're on a bike and you can actually talk to somebody and you're not stuck inside a car. There's a lot of social interaction that happens when you have people biking and they're out in the community meeting each other. And I think a lot of people need that after COVID. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dave Gustafson, followed by Joan Dixon.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, council members. Hello, city staff. It warms my heart. Dave Gustafson, 302 West Columbia Street. It really warms my heart to see so many people at one of the busiest times of the year come out to talk about transportation safety. I appreciate everything that the council and city staff have been doing in recent years to take transportation safety more seriously. I'm amazed that we filled an hour now with lots of people of different ages and walks of life, filling, so many stories of, hasn't been that repetitive. There have been a lot of different perspectives, but I think what you're hearing is like these are the folks that are taking their time to come out and ask for more sense of safety as they're biking. Just a couple things. I think that from my years of working on transportation safety, we've seen our built environment is just not safe for pedestrians and bicyclists in many areas. Far too often, the design of our roads is for, the speed and convenience of cars. Cars nowadays, the SUVs, the trucks, a lot of them are designed to, when they do hit people, they are hitting them at their vital organs. It's not, the cars are the vehicles are getting more dangerous. And a few other things. I've also seen, I was a journalist for many years. I've covered a lot of roadway fatalities outside of Virginia, but I've seen it. Those images stick with you. Like Joseph, I know someone who's been killed on a bicycle in D.C. I don't want to see one of those white ghost bikes in Falls Church ever. So I appreciate what everyone here is, taking part of their time and you all to listen to us. So a few other points just to add on. There is a 2019 study from the Journal of Transport and Health that follows 13 years of data and 12 big U.S. cities. And it says that the cities that have more bicycle facilities are safer for all road users, so pedestrians, people on bikes, people in cars, because the space is designed to be shared. It's not to prioritize cars and car convenience and car speed above all others. And just to tack on to what some of my other bicyclist friends here have said, bike lanes are a very low cost compared to a lot of the CIP projects that the city has done. So it's a very low cost, high return on investment. And I would also encourage everyone to Google bike lanes mean business because if people slow down and they'll be spending more money, and I think you're hearing that from the folks who have joined us from outside the city. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Joan Dixon, followed by Sarah Ruth.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing us to all speak. Joan Dixon. I live in Springfield, and I work in McLean. And I was born and raised here, grew up in North Springfield and Falls Church. I went to junior high, J.G. Whittier, which is no longer anymore, and Falls Church High School. And every day when I go to work, I go from Springfield to McLean because I don't want to take the 495. So I take the route where it leads me to Great Falls Street. And I come on across the WNOD trail, the bike and walking trail. And I slow down to make sure that there's no one coming, walking, or riding. A lot of people in cars do not. I have seen them many times just go on past, and there'll be a bike coming that will have to stop and look, or walkers, runners, and it concerns me. And I know there are other pedestrian crossings, say on Westmoreland or some of these in McLean, that have blinking lights or some kind of warning symbol that alerts drivers to the fact that there are walkers coming. And I was just thinking of this, thinking, why can't they be something like that on this trail where the driver will be alerted because they're not always looking? So that's one concern that I have. I'm fairly new to Bike Falls Church. I joined them because I thought that they were an organization that could set me up with bike rides and that sort of thing. And I started reading the emails from Andrew and realized that, oh my gosh, this is an advocacy group. How wonderful is this that they are trying and working to make my old city from the 60s and 70s to be safe and welcoming to all of us and to our children in the future. So I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I really hope that you will take all of this seriously and consider what everyone has said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Sarah Ruth, followed by Sarah Lutz.
Thank you very much for allowing us all to come here and speak to you about this. I know you've had a long evening, so I'll try and keep this very short. My name is Sarah Ruth. I live at 28 Meadow Lane, so I'm in the Hillwood area of Falls Church. I'm a lifelong cyclist. I love the fact that I can live in Falls Church. Everything is on a human scale. Everything I need is literally on my doorstep. That's just something that I never expected when I came to America, actually, that I could almost live car-free. But that's the life I'm living, and I absolutely love that. But very often when I'm trying to get around Falls Church, and I'm going to use that word safety again, because I just have to always think, what is the safety implication? How dangerous is it for me to get from where I am to where I want to be? And I just feel sad that I have to make that calculation every time. I read the 20 mile an hour speed recommendations, and I have to say I just felt thoroughly deflated by that. There were 3 categories of street, and that study ruled out doing anything about the 2 most dangerous categories, primarily because they didn't want to do enforcement and they were worried about the drivers wouldn't like it. I live sandwiched in among those streets. I have Broad to the north, I have Annandale Road, Washington Street corridor, all around the Hillwood area. My little data point, the day I read that study, I sat at the traffic lights at Cherry, this was a Sunday, Cherry and Broad. Every car that went by was exceeding 32 mile an hour. The fastest was going at 42 miles an hour. That study says that at 42 miles an hour, you're pretty much going to get severely injured if you get hit. That's why, as a cyclist, I don't go on Broad Street, I don't go anywhere near Annandale Road. So I really support a lot of the ideas that you're having about improving conditions in the neighborhood streets, but I really would ask you to just bring some attention, maybe just a bit of courage sometimes to deal with some of these bigger questions, these bigger issues on the big arterial roads, because those are actually what really keep a lot of us in our cars and feeling very unsafe. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Next we have Sarah Lutz, followed by Ann Conrad.
Hello, thank you for letting all of us come here and speak today. My name is Sarah Lutz. I live outside of Falls Church, but frequently commute through the city on the WOD trail. A little bit about me. I grew up in a city that was completely car-centric. There was absolutely no bike infrastructure. And one of my first memories on a bike was my dad taking me on a ride with my sister to pick up ice cream. Most of the route was on, a very small, unprotected bike lane, but it was on a very busy and fast road that had no provision for cars coming into the bike lane and turning right. So I was completely traumatized by that experience, and it took me years to feel comfortable biking outside of my neighborhood after that. Since then, I've gained confidence and experience biking, but for many young or newer bikers, the lack of bike infrastructure in any city remains a huge barrier to entry. Falls Church has amazing local businesses that I wish more people would be able to access, but protected bike lanes like the proposal for Park Street are crucial for riders to feel safe, and if they don't feel safe, they won't bike into the city. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And next we have Ann Conrad, followed by Paul Rothstein.
Hi, my name is Ann Conrad. I live at 373 West Broad Street, just a stone's throw away from here. And I've lived in Falls Church just under a year now. I moved here with my husband in October of 2021. I work remotely, but he works in Sterling. And when we were looking for communities to live in, when we moved to DC from California, not DC, Northern Virginia area, we wanted to prioritize walkability, bikeability, and a tight-knit community. And so we're really happy in Falls Church. Love the access to the WNOD trail. We use the Capital Bike Share to get to the metro, and I've had a great time exploring the area by bicycle. Just as we live really close to the bike trail, it's really hard to get to the bike trails without just dealing with a lot of traffic. There's no curbs. And coming from a very bike-friendly community in California and who had a bike master plan and saw a lot of progress over the 10 years that we were there, implementing bike master plans and getting more protected bike lanes and prioritizing safe mobility infrastructure definitely increases ridership. It takes cars off the road. It encourages sustainable, communities, environments, and healthy people. And I think that's something everyone would like to see. So I'm just here to ask you to keep working towards the bike master plan and keep encouraging families like ours to bike when possible. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker is Paul Rothstein.
Is he by video link?
Oh, yeah, he did sign up to come in online, but I don't see him at the meeting, so.
Mr. Rothstein, are you on the video link? Are you on the Teams meeting? We'd like to recognize you to speak. Okay, it doesn't look like he's here right now. Celeste, is that right?
That's correct. I don't see him on the meeting.
Okay. So, Mr. Rothstein, if you've lost the connection, you're certainly most welcome to join us later on, and I'll give you the opportunity to speak at a later point.
That would be all I have signed up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we've had a great deal, a large number of speakers. Thank you for coming out. This is all part of what makes Falls Church a great place to be. I have to say, I saw the group outside, and I thought that's probably the most well-behaved biker gang I've ever seen. But I would just say this, that I believe council shares your goals, is sympathetic to what you want. I think we want the same things as a community. It is some ways a challenge. We're trying to basically change infrastructure put in the 40s and 50s that was just wholly car-centric, and to make it pedestrian-friendly and bike-friendly, which we are trying to do. And I know we're not doing it fast enough for a lot of folks, and I think we're not doing fast enough for us here on council as well. So it is, I think, a common goal. It is the future. Getting people out of cars, getting people out of gasoline engines is something that I think we all want to see, and get people walking, biking, in a safe manner is a shared goal, I think, of this city. So we have been doing things. Bike shares, we heard, has come to town. That's only been in the past few years. We have some of the most stringent bike parking requirements in Northern Virginia in terms of requirements for number of bike spaces. The dual trails, as you mentioned, also some folks mentioned, but there's so much more to do. And so I would just say to you that I think you have the full commitment of this council to improve bike safety, to improve bike access, and to make this a better place to bike. And we are working on that. I don't have anything new to tell you tonight of any new proposals, other than I think you've been heard loud and clear. And so we will continue to work to make this a better place for bikers. I'm also going to give the city manager, I don't want to put him on the spot, but during the city manager's report, if you have anything you'd like to say as well as far as administrative things we're doing right now. But I think we all share the same goal, working towards the same outcome. So I just want to thank you all for coming out this evening, and stay tuned. Let's go on maybe to council request. Thank you. Council request or council comments? Does anyone have anything they'd like to add or like to say right now? Vice Mayor Hardy, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, so thank you. Thank you to all 26 of you who came out. I took notes along the way, so thank you. It is really heartening to see such great support. I did want to respond to a couple things, and I actually asked the city manager during his report to respond as well. I think Mr. Lord is no longer here. He was our first commenter on the Pocket Park and being the liaison to the EDA, and I think they're the leads on the 4 pocket parks that are being contemplated. I believe the one that's identified at City Hall is actually already nixed from last month, but Mr. Shields, if you can comment on that during your report, that would be terrific. We also heard comments on the lack of safe crossings at the secondary campus. And so I've got a 12-year-old and 14-year-old who walk to school. They've been walking to school during COVID and haven't stopped. They haven't gotten a school bus since 2020. And so I could be on the other side of the dais because I have the same concerns. We have told our kids, don't bike to school because there's so many curb cuts. It's really unsafe. So they are on foot. So I share all those concerns. That said, there are 2 projects. And so we're quite proud of the fact that we won some significant grant dollars from the region to improve the Haycock and 7 intersection. So there will be a safe, fully intersection at Mustang Alley and Haycock. So I would love for Ms. Messer to maybe speak to the timing of that. The other comment I heard is there's really no great path from the W&OD up to Shreve Road to the secondary campus. And that's the second project that we won a grant award for a couple of years ago. And so that project is forthcoming. So there is work underway. These are recognized deficits we know in the infrastructure to get to the secondary campus. That said, it's not a official bike route there. So that is still something that we need to get to. So maybe if Ms. Mestre, you can comment on both of those during the report, that would be great. And then the last comment I would have is, at the end of the day, it really is about action, right? So it's great that we have plans. Plans are only good if you actually do them and prioritize them. And so as we talk about the budget amendments that we might have coming up this fall, Mr. Shields, I'd like to know what funding we already have for bikes in the operating budget today, and if there are things that we can augment in upcoming budget amendments. I think you've got open ears on council to take action on a lot of these ideas. So that's my request. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, unless there's anyone else on council who would like to speak, I guess we'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Mr. Shields.
Well, thank you, Mayor Tarter and members of council. And I would like to take time tonight just to provide an overview of the scope of work for the update for the Bike Master Plan. And I'll also provide an update on the traffic signal that is planned across Haycock Road at Mustang Alley. So first, as Mr. Stevens, a member of our Planning Commission, mentioned earlier tonight, the Bike Master Plan is due for an update. It was last updated in 2015, and I think probably most people in the room are familiar with that. We are very pleased that this is a partnership with Virginia Tech and one of the, a great leader in the area of bicycling safety. Ralph Bueller will lead a studio to work with the city on updating our Bike Master Plan. So the purpose of the plan is to start, I'll just hit some of the key points of it. One is to start with research of the exemplary cases of bicycle network design and planning. We'll examine global benchmarks as well as smaller suburban jurisdictions and sort of like jurisdictions and great case studies of successes in areas like us. We will have a review of the current bicycle plan. We'll have a community outreach piece of this, including a survey, but including other ways for the community to participate in the planning process. Then there will be an evaluation of routes and creation of alternatives and looking at all the technical aspects of our street design, the volume, the traffic stress, environmental factors, lighting, and those types of things, as well as the community amenities that people are trying to get to by bicycle. Obviously, the safe routes to school will be a top priority in this planning effort. The deliverables are 3 to 5 networked bicycle routes in the city. And then what's really key about this planning process is then that sets the stage for all of the investments that we make in the city. Whenever we repave a street or whenever we're doing improvements, these bicycle facilities go in when that work is happening. So I invite everybody to participate in that. I think, we've had this is a community that always has a lot of community engagement. when we updated our pedestrian plan and our bicycle plan in 2015, that plan reflected the consensus at that time. And it is an opportunity, I think, for the city to evolve in a pretty big step forward towards more bicycle facilities than what has been called for in city plans in the past. There are important dialogues with other interests and on-street parking and business interests, and that's why the planning process is so important, to work those out and arrive at good solutions, so that when we're doing the normal things like paving a street, we don't have to have those battles. We just follow the plan. And so looking forward to engagement on that, and happy to answer any questions about that. That's not the only thing I was going to report on tonight, but I'll stop there just to see if there's any questions. I will note also that our staff lead for this has been Carrie Odanino, so I want to thank her. She really was the spark plug to have Ralph Bueller participate in the city on this plan, and I think it's going to produce really good results for the city.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shields. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Shields on what he's spoken to so far? Ms. Hardy?
Thanks. Mr. Shields, did you have an update on the pocket parks? I just wanted to be responsive to the public comment that we received.
So we are, the EDA has done a review of the pocket park ideas. There are 4 that were proposed, and the EDA has endorsed 3 of those, and that does not include the proposed park in front of City Hall. We are still working through the details of administering the construction of those, and we will come to council, because the council also has, while some of the funds have been appropriated to the EDA, not all of them have. So there's also another chance for the city council to get fully briefed on the proposal and consider the final appropriation for that project. But as of right now, the EDA is not recommending the City Hall portion of the parklet program.
Great. And what about the 2 infrastructure projects at Haycock and 7 and Shreve?
So those are being put in by the developer of West Falls. We did, as the council is aware, ask them to front load the signal on Haycock, as opposed to putting that in at the end of the project, put it in at the beginning of the project. There are easements that are required both from the Giant Shopping Center and from the HOA in order to have a signal at that location. So that's an additional step that we hadn't counted on in the original schedules for that, and we're working through that process with our project manager. So once we get through that, I think we'll have a clear idea of the deliverable of a functioning signal for Mustang Alley. And Ms. Mester, please add any information you have.
Yeah, that's the first grant for MVTA that Ms. Hardy mentioned. The second one is the one on WNOD in Shreve that would come up to the Route 7 in Haycock. That one is, the survey work has just started, and that is being managed in partnership with Fairfax County. So all the adjacent property owners have been notified so we could do the survey work. Then we'll move into design, and construction is scheduled for FY27. That'll be refined once we get the design, and it's designed to integrate into the West Falls work that Mr. Shields was just talking about, and increase pedestrian and biking safety from WNOD over to the economic development and our 2 schools.
All right. Mr. Schneider?
Sure. Thanks very much. Thanks for everyone there. I wish I could be there, but I got the flu, and I think it's a good idea for everybody present that I'm not there. Just a couple quick things. I think the desire tonight is for more immediate things that we can do more rapidly. And I'm wondering, Mr. City Manager, how we appreciate the planning effort. It's been a pleasure working with staff to provide the regional funding for things like the WNOD and other, certainly the Haycock and Broad Street projects, and then the North Washington Street project and then Park Avenue. So we'll keep working at the regional level to get money and projects, but Mr. City Manager, do you have some thoughts in mind about how to move more rapidly to address some of the biking issues and not having to wait for the master plan? Thank you.
So, we have a very robust capital improvements program of transportation projects, and those are the ones we're implementing right now. And those do include bike facilities, and we can provide a list of those. Some of the big policy questions, though, like having dedicated bike lanes on West Street or on Great Falls or on Little Falls, that is a community engagement process, and it really shouldn't happen in the context of a project. It should happen in the context, I believe, of a planning process of a network of bike facilities that the community can buy into, so that when we can then implement bike facilities on those streets. What we do know from all of those streets is that there will need to be a community discussion about those, because there are impacts to the homeowners. And in the past, when we've had those discussions, the consensus was not to have those bicycle facilities and to have Shiros in lieu of bicycle facilities. I think with good leadership and I think with good technical expertise, that I think we're going to have some benefits with this Virginia Tech studio. Maybe we can work through those community discussions and produce different outcomes than we have in the past. So I think that's the exciting opportunity that we have before us to have those discussions and come to good outcomes. That's my thought, just initially with respect to your question.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments as relates to this issue? All right, so I'm going to just let the public know you're certainly most welcome to stay for the rest of our hearing. I think that's probably going to be it for a discussion of bicycles for tonight. So just to let you know that, and I would just say, as I think you already know, please stay engaged. We value your input, your leadership, your advocacy, your passion on this issue. And we here on council, I think, share the same goals as you do. And so, stay tuned and let's continue our conversation. Mr. Shields, you had other items you wanted to discuss as well?
So, Council, I did want to just take the opportunity during the manager's report to speak to the community profile that was produced by the city just last month. And if we could put it up on the screen. And the purpose of this briefing is just to raise awareness of this document. And this is produced by our city planning department on an annual basis. This year, one of our new members of the planning team, Zoe LaRive, was our lead for this project, and she assembled the staff to make sure we had all the facts and all the information that we wanted to touch on with the profile. It does provide the community a great snapshot of the city in a point of time. It lists some of the big things that have happened over the past year, including the opening of the Meridian High School, including the Smart Cities grant that it references the use of the ARPA dollars that were provided to the city for our COVID recovery and how we're using those funds. It references the Amazon Reach grants that we're deploying for affordable housing in the city. It speaks to the opening of the library and Big Chimneys Park, which all happened in the year that this profile is covering. It also notes some of the private development, including the approval of the West Falls project, the 10-acre site that we were speaking of just a moment ago, as well as the Broad and Washington project, both of which are now under construction. It notes some of the city's demographic information, our current population, and also notes some of the trends that we're seeing in our demographics, and notes some of the attributes of the city, including our high livability index and other things that make this such an attractive community to call home and to work. The organization of the profile is organized along some of the key vision elements of the comprehensive plan, so it addresses areas of progress in small town character and an urban setting. It speaks to our economic sustainability and the private investment in the city and those trends. It speaks to environmental sustainability. in the areas of climate, air, energy, stormwater, solid waste, recycling, urban forestry, and biodiversity. It speaks to our efforts on inclusiveness and social sustainability, including a reference of our use of CARES dollars and ARPA funds to help particularly target, to help the vulnerable parts of our community as we recover from COVID. It speaks to trends in education in the city, and it speaks to what we're doing in the area of mobility and accessibility, and how we aim, as we've just been discussing, to increase walking, biking, and transit. And then it closes with a discussion of responsive and accountable government, our high levels of resident participation, and it speaks to our fiscal management, our AAA bond ratings, and the work that we did to build up capital reserves to enable some of the investments that were referenced earlier, including the high school and the library. So I just wanted to alert folks to the existence of this profile. Our next one will come out next spring. This one was a few months late, but it is a very useful resource for the community and kind of a go-to point if people are seeking information about the city. So I'll stop my report there and happy to answer any questions.
All right, Ms. Conley.
Mr. Shields, where is this on the website?
Is
Is it right there, or is it easy to find?
We will raise its profile. I think it's in the planning department right now, but we will put it on the homepage so people can easily find it.
That's great, because no one would know where to look if
That's right.
they didn't find it there. It is a very nice snapshot and a good annual report style presentation. I think that people will find it useful. Thanks.
All right, any other comments from Mr. Shields? Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Shields. Before we get on to business on the agenda, I guess as this hearing began, I was told that this was the last opportunity our city attorney would be here, at least formally, and so I'm not sure any of us have really prepared remarks, but I just wanted to note the occasion with, I guess, sadness in some ways and also thankfulness in others. But I just wanted to say that we are most appreciative of the great work you've done on behalf of the city for so many years. I had known Carol for years before she came to Falls Church, and I've always respected her as a top-notch attorney with the highest ethics. And I've come to work with her substantially more now that she's been at the city. And I think we all share in our admiration and respect and appreciation for you in terms of bringing us through some very challenging times. The legal work alone on the 10-acre deal was just, phenomenal for a one-man or one-woman shop. You have done some fantastic work for the city, but there are time of different projects and issues and challenges, many of which never make it to the public's eye. They may be dealt with in closed sessions and other places, but you have unfailingly offered, in my opinion, great advice, great counsel in a measured way. And so I just wanted, on behalf of my colleagues and council, to thank you for your fantastic work here and wish you the best of luck going forward.
Thank you. It is mixed. There's mixed feelings all around. It's I will miss people. I will miss having everyday involvement in the work, but it has been, I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed, we have an impressive group of residents and committed members of the community here in Falls Church. There are people who volunteer and provide just extraordinary services to the city, and there's a lot of passion, as we saw here tonight with the bicycle people, and that's not isolated, that's just what was here tonight. But it's also been great working with this council and with the council members that I've worked with before, as well as Wyatt and all of his staff and the clerk's office. It's been a great bunch of people, and I don't plan to be a stranger to that, but I will be happy to have a little time off. So, but as I've been trying to tell people, they should just give me a call if there are any questions. I don't want to jump back into work, but I'll try to answer questions off the top of my head.
Okay, I don't know if
But
anybody
thank
else has
you.
anything to add, but you're certainly most welcome. Mr. Duncan?
You'll get over that mixed feelings thing the first Monday night when you realize, oh no, I don't have to go and spend hours listening to all those intelligent people and the elected officials too. I just want to thank you for the incredible range of efforts that you've been involved in. I mean, looking back on the 12 years that I've been on council, and you overlap with me, I think 8 of those 12 years, it's really extraordinary in the city's history, and so much landed at some point along the line squarely in your lap, and we relied on your research and expertise and legal opinions and good judgment, and unfailingly, I think you delivered, for us and for the city, and for that we're eternally grateful.
Thank
All
you.
right. So, I hope we can find a time that's mutually agreeable to honor you and to celebrate your tenure here, maybe more formally. And so, Mr. Shields, I might ask that you give some thought as to a proper occasion, maybe a good party we can have as a group to celebrate that. And Carol, you had mentioned being able to call you. I think we will be taking you up on that. I'm not sure we'll wait very long for that. So be careful what you offer or what pleasantries you might give us, because we will have no compunction, I think, in bringing you back as much as you'll allow. So, Ms. Connolly, did you have something you wanted to add? Or okay.
I just want to thank you, Carol, for your wise and thoughtful advice, because there are a lot of things that city council members want to do or think about or wish to do, and you are always spot on with your advice and how you think things through, and I really do appreciate that. Your perspective on that is really important for all of us, so thank you.
Thank you.
And as Mr. Duncan said, the breadth of knowledge that you have and the depth of projects that you've had to get into in your time here has been just immense and really impressive. So thank you for all the time and effort and many, many hours late into the night that you've put into making Falls Church a better place.
Thank you. A lot of those projects are what made it interesting and fun. And really, I do have a sense of pride about a lot of those projects. I was not doing them myself, but having an involvement in a lot of big things for the city. And I'll be watching as they continue to create a better city here.
And hopefully they'll come to the farmer's market on Saturdays. Yes.
All right. Thank you. So now at 9:08, let's get started on the business on the agenda. And I would just urge everyone, we have a pretty long agenda, not only a regular session, but I think a work session as well. So let's get going and pick up the pace here a little bit if we can. Madam Clerk, will you call the first item?
Yes, the first item is a public hearing on TO 22-15, ordinance to amend Ordinance 2008 to continue the suspension of certain zoning regulations for 6 months after the end of the COVID-19 emergency declaration by City Council.
All right.
So this was before you on the 12th for first reading, and what this ordinance is designed to do is to continue the flexibility that was enacted to deal with the COVID issues and allow the staff, give a 6-month period to see which of the ordinances should be made permanent and how that should be done. So that's all this would do, is preserve the status quo for another 6 months on these zoning rules, and in that time, any permanent changes would be enacted as code changes.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Leon, and then Ms. Conley.
Thank you. Question on the approach that we're using for this. Wanted to clarify how much input from businesses will occur in the 6 months involved in this extension. Just making sure that it's happening, and to what extent. Could you describe that, please?
So we will. We've done some surveying of. We've over the period of time where we kind of first considered some options for how we would make things permanent. And then we stepped away from that as we continued the emergency. We had a huge increase in cases as we were considering it last time, so we extended the state of emergency. We've since surveyed the businesses and we've gathered more information. I think the basic approach that we're going to take is one that is efficient for the restaurants, easy to navigate, also efficient for staff to administer. There are certain non-negotiables, such as fire safety and just human safety in any of these outdoor facilities, and accessibility. And kind of with those as the sort of organizing principles, we're going to develop code for the council's consideration, and we'll do that with opportunities for input for the business community.
Thank you. Good to know that we've actually collected the survey information. It's just a matter of making sure that it's as current and real time to this, and there's a loop back process that's involved after we draft the recommendations. Okay, thank you.
Other comments, questions? Okay, so let's, any member of the public wish to speak to this matter? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt TO 22-50.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Was that Ms. Leon on the second?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Leon?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz-Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mayor Charter?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move to the next item.
Yes, we have TR 22-35, resolution to amend the voluntary concessions, community benefits, and terms and conditions to reduce the minimum number of theater seats required and provide for the withholding of additional residential certificates of occupancy until the theater lease is executed for the project known as Founders Row on application by Mill Creek Residential Trust, Founders Row Holdings, LLC.
Mr. Shields?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. The staff recommendation on both the SE amendment and the economic development agreement is to defer final consideration of both of these to your meeting, your regular meeting of October 11th. The developer has been informed of that recommendation and is not at the meeting tonight. We do have staff on this call to answer any questions that the council might have. Just as a form of a brief report, the city attorney has done a review of the economic development agreement. We believe it is informed that we can recommend to the city council for consideration at your meeting on October 11th. The council also asked for a couple of things. One, for a copy of the lease with the theater operator that has been provided to the city. The city attorney has reviewed it. A second thing is to meet with the theater CEO, just to have a discussion with them and hear from them directly about their plans to open the theater and to operate the theater. That has occurred as well, and that was, I think, a very constructive and interesting meeting. Paragon staff have been meeting with officials have been meeting with staff to work through the sign package for the theater and other details like that. But this was really just a discussion about their business model and an affirmation that they have every intention to operate here and are looking forward to opening at this location if they are able to proceed at the meeting, in the spring of 2024. Staff that are on this call were also party to that phone call, and I'm sure they could add some further context if council would like more tonight. And then lastly, I would note that we've received an exhibit providing some of the details on the courtyard improvements that are proposed by Mill Creek. I think that merits a little bit more discussion with the developer to get some clarification. What we were really looking for is some increased canopy coverage and shade in the courtyard area and more texture to have a good feel to it. And so I think there is more work we can do on that between now and October 11th. That is all I have to report. Again, I'll just note staff is on the call if council has any additional questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this matter? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Ms. McCraw?
Yeah, I'd just like to note, the clerk has provided you with a motion to continue the public hearing so that we don't have to re-advertise this matter because it's been advertised several times for different hearings. So just if you can use the extra motion that was placed at your places before the meeting.
Got it. And you also come back for this since this is a carry-on of things that you've started, right?
We'll see if
Okay.
that's needed.
All right. I'll take that as a yes. So do we have a motion?
I move to continue the public hearing for TR 2235 to the October 11th, 2022 City Council meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Hardy on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Hardy,
Yes.
Ms. Leon,
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
and Mayor Tarter. Motion carries 7-0.
Sorry, I have to make sure my mic's on. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's keep going.
The next item is TR 22-36, resolution to approve and authorize the city manager to execute an economic development agreement between the City of Falls Church, Virginia, the City of Falls Church Economic Development Authority, and Founders Row Holdings, LLC.
So, Mayor, I'll just speak to this briefly. In discussion on the interim city attorney, while the city council is conducting recruitment and interviews for the permanent replacement for Ms. McCoskry, Ms. McCoskry had recommended that we have a discussion with Brian Lubkeman, who's done work for the city in times in the past.
No, we're on this one. We're on the EDA agreement.
Oh, I thought that, so
No, they weren't the same.
Part two of the
okay,
earlier
so we just need,
conversation.
I'm sorry, I don't have anything to add on the EDA agreement, and I will circle back on the city attorney item as soon as the council has disposed of this item.
So do we need a motion that's like the one we just passed except says 2236?
It's not a public hearing, it's just a resolution, so Carol, would that be just to defer it to the,
That's correct. You can just move to defer this item to the October 11th meeting.
I'll do that.
I move to defer 2236 to the October 11th meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, I'll open up to public comment, whether I need to or not. Any member of the public wish to speak to this matter? Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy,
Yes.
Ms. Leon,
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
and Mayor Tarter.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. And now we are on to TR 22-40, resolution appointing Brian Lubkeman and the law firm of Brillia Hundley as interim city attorney for the City of Falls Church and authorizing the city manager to execute the retainer agreement with the firm. I think we might have changed that title. Carol, did you want me to read what we changed it to?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
We had some back and forth with the attorney about the title. So TR 22-40, resolution appointing Brian J. Lubkeman of the law firm of Brillia Hundley PC as interim city attorney for the City of Falls Church and authorizing the city manager to execute a legal services agreement with Mr. Lubkeman.
Mr. Shields?
Okay, and I apologize. I want the record to show this is the first time I've ever not listened to the city clerk. So, first time for anything. So, the resolution is to, just as the clerk noted, and this did come with the initial recommendation of the city of Carroll that we talk with Mr. Lubkeman to provide these interim services, which we did, and he is available. He currently serves as the city attorney for the city of Fairfax, and his partner serves as the town attorney for the town of Vienna. They are very well versed in local government law and all of the variety of work that we do and needs that we have. And so we recommend this interim appointment. In discussion with Mr. Lubkeman, I think the idea is that this would be at the most through December 31st. And so we will be optimistic that we will have a permanent appointment by that time. And I think that ends my report. And Carol, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add.
I will just add that I did recommend that you all appoint Mr. Lubkeman, partly because he has such directly relevant experience, having been the city attorney for Fairfax, for the city of Fairfax since 2005. Prior to that, he was a city attorney for the city of Manassas Park, and earlier he was even an assistant county attorney for the county of Fairfax. So he's had lots of local government experience. The other area that he has good experience in, and that he has helped me out with some items on, is his private clients. He does primarily commercial real estate work for them, and that's been very helpful. You know, lots of what we've been doing lately does fall into that category. So I think he has lots of good experience with his city of Fairfax work and private. He won't be doing as much private work over the next few months. He will be busy, but I've tried to make sure that he will have the other outside attorneys that I've been using to use as necessary. So for a temporary period, I think this should work extremely well.
All right, thank you. Ms. Hardy?
Thank you. So I have a disclosure read, and it's not only because I'm in denial that this is your last meeting, Carol. With regard to TR 22-40, which is before council as an agenda item in 10B2, I've consulted with the city attorney, and I'm not required by Virginia law to make any statement about this matter. Nonetheless, I wish to disclose on the record and in the minutes that my brother's fiance is employed by Brillia Hundley, where the appointee to the interim city attorney is a partner. I therefore choose not to participate in voting on this matter tonight.
All right. Any other comments or questions relating to this matter? Okay, do we have a motion?
Move to adopt TR 22-40.
Second.
Ms. Leon on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
And Ms. Hardy, would that be an abstention or just?
Abstain.
I think she's not participating.
Okay, I won't call her. Ms. Leon?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
And Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, council.
Thank you. All right, let's go on to the consent agenda. Does anybody want to remove any item from the consent agenda? If not, does anyone have a motion regarding the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Hiscott on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Leon?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
And Mayor Tarter?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's nearly 9:30. I propose we take a short recess and reconvene for our work session items, and reconvene in 10 minutes or thereabouts. Anyone have any objection to that? All right, we are in recess for 10 minutes.
We have Emily Bazemore, who is going to provide the staff report, and I don't know whether Mr. Stoddard, if you wanted to make an introduction, or should we just turn it straight over to Emily?
This is Paul. I'm happy to do a short introduction. So small area plans, this is something that got its start in the city under Jim Schneider's leadership. It's really a practice he brought over from Arlington, and it really is a good practice for giving the community a chance to look at a relatively compact geographic area and really think about what the future of that area could be, provide a compelling vision, and then pull together all the pieces that would be needed to make that happen, whether that's private investments, public investments, a rework of some city policies or the zoning ordinances, but it all relates back to what is that compelling vision for the future the community wants to see. And the East End Small Area Plan is the last of the city's planning opportunity areas getting this look. But before I give away the whole story, I'll turn it over to Emily.
Thank you so much, Paul. Good evening, Council. So my plan for tonight is to briefly introduce the small area plan and the request and recommendation from you all. But I would like to focus mostly on a PowerPoint presentation that kind of walks through the process and where we're at in that, as well as the different chapters. So just to begin, City Council is requested to review and provide feedback on the draft East End Small Area Plan. This work session is Council's last scheduled work session prior to broader public engagement in the fall, including engagement with all boards and commissions, a community pop-up event, and a web survey. The City Council last reviewed materials during work session on March 21st of 2022. Since then, the following has occurred. All chapters have been drafted. Council previously reviewed both the introduction and background chapter, the concepts chapter, and the land use and zoning chapter. The Planning Commission reviewed and guided development of the small area plan and work sessions on April 20th, 2022 and August 3rd, 2022. These were in addition to their first work session back in December, specifically December 1st of 2021. And finally, staff has begun organizing for the fall community engagement period. Staff recommends that City Council review the newly drafted chapters and revisions to previously reviewed chapters. As noted in the timing section of the staff report, the immediate next steps are wider community engagement this fall. So moving into the presentation for tonight, next slide, Cindy. Thank you. So I'd like to start off by asking why small area planning, but to answer this question, we really need to look at what is small area planning. Small area plans are long-range plans that are applied to smaller areas to address unique issues with tailored solutions. In the City of Falls Church, these areas are identified through the comprehensive plan as POAs, which are also known as planning opportunity areas. These are areas where property may be underutilized, and these are recommended areas for additional development or reinvestment. Next slide. So looking at our agenda for tonight, just want to give you guys a brief overview of the East End, a look at community engagement thus far, a look at East End history, and then a look at our vision statement and goals, review of draft chapters and the strategies that are included in them, and then finally a review of our engagement again, but this time with the focus on next steps. Next slide. Thank you. So looking at where is the East End, where exactly are we planning for? We're planning for POA 5. It is, like Paul said, the last of our POAs that we are focusing on. It's at the southern end of the city and it borders Fairfax County and Arlington County. It's also located right next to that Seven Corners intersection, which you can really see on the vicinity map to the right of the screen. Next slide, please. So looking at community engagement and our process to date, I just want to highlight that back in November, almost a year ago now, we had our community kickoff meeting. There was great attendance. Some of you guys were there for that, and that was back in November of 2021. Following that, we had a council work session back in, I guess, early spring, March 2022. And then we've also had those planning commission work sessions, first on December 1st and then April 30th and August 3rd. August 3rd is where they actually saw the whole draft small area plan presented to them. And just to note, and this was highlighted in the staff report, there was a recommendation made by Planning Commission to see all chapters before it came back to council. So ultimately, they've seen them, they have positive recommendations, and now you guys are once again reviewing them. It says on September 26th, I meant September 27th, but in your second work session meeting today. Next slide, please. So now we're moving into our chapters. And to begin with, we have chapter 1, which was our introduction and background chapter. Notes here may sound familiar because we did go through this back in March. But to begin, there is history explored in this area, the East End, and it really begins with that American Indian history of the Dogs, who created a travel path along what is now Route 7. Following the migration of the American Indians, English colonists made this a major east to west road. Moving into Civil War history in the area, something that the chapter notes is Fort Buffalo and its location in the East End. Fort Buffalo was constructed by the New York Infantry, and it had great views of the South and East, where Confederate troops would often approach through. Another Civil War history note, where Oakwood Cemetery is now located, that was actually the location of the first Methodist meeting house in the area. And this was destroyed during the Civil War. The chapter also covers some African American history as well, and specifically that of Frederick Foote Sr., who purchased 28 acres from a man that enslaved him back in 1864. Prior to his death, Foote had purchased an additional 13 acres in the East End, and those properties are now what we know as a location of Eden Center, Kuhns Ford, and Seven Corners Shopping Center today. And finally, the chapter moves into post-World War II history, and this is where we explore the construction of Route 50 in 1950. And you can see that the intersection that it created to the right ultimately created the Seven Corners intersection that we know today. And then we talk about the South Vietnamese immigration in the 70s into Arlington following the fall of Saigon, and how ultimately during metro construction in the 1980s, these immigrants were displaced and some chose to come over to Falls Church and create what is now the Eden Center. The chapter also looks at past studies, specifically the comp plan update over in Fairfax. That update was made in 2015, the Virginia Tech student study in the area, and the ULI TAP from 2018. This chapter also notes ongoing projects in the area, and these are further explored in our transportation chapter. But of course, the Fairfax County Ring Road and the BRT Envision Route 7 from the MBTC. Next slide, please. So moving on to chapter 2, this is our concepts chapter, and this is where we begin with our vision statement. So I'm just going to read it straight off the slide for you guys. The East End is a cultural hub focused on the Eden Center. Transportation investments put people first by prioritizing connectivity and accessibility. Green spaces provide opportunities for community members to gather, recreate, or relax. Nearby housing affordability is preserved, while new commercial and residential development occurs within the planning opportunity area. A green approach to infrastructure, building, and site design supports the environmental sustainability of the area for future generations. I just want to note really quick that this vision statement has changed prior to PC review of our infrastructure and environment chapter. They really wanted to see language around green infrastructure and sustainability in this vision statement, and that's an edit that we made following their review. Next slide, please. All right, so getting to our goals in the concepts chapter, these goals were created to ultimately fulfill and support that vision statement on the previous slide for the East End. So I'm just gonna read them off to you guys in order. So the first goal is to preserve the Eden Center and its cultural identity by celebrating Vietnamese American culture. How do we do this? We can invest in public art to create a vibrant cultural district. And we can also help to create new spaces to encourage festivals and celebrations in Eden Center. Our second goal is enhancing multimodal mobility and accessibility throughout the East End. Here we want to treat Wilson Boulevard, East Broad Street, and Roosevelt Boulevard as great streets. We also want to focus on reconnecting adjacent sites through a revised street grid to promote safe and comfortable streets to both walk and bike. Our third goal is to strengthen the sense of community in the East End by providing active public spaces for the public to enjoy and gather while incorporating green space for connection to nature. Here we have the idea of incorporating a regional East End farmers market and also creating public parks and plazas where children can play. Next slide, please. Our fourth goal is to preserve and provide affordable housing opportunities in and around the East End. Right now, we want to look at maintaining housing stock for a variety of incomes, the housing stock that exists there, just continuing to ensure that it remains, and exploring affordable housing opportunities for seniors and expanding families. Goal number 5 is investing in the East End to create and maintain consistent economic activity and return the area to regional prominence. Here we want to focus on future higher density infill development of surface lots and establishing the East End as a gateway through public investments of streetscapes, parks, signage, etc. And our final goal is to develop the area in an environmentally sustainable way. Again, this is a new goal following that Planning Commission recommendation. Here we want to replace impervious surfaces with permeable landscape to increase stormwater resiliency. We want to introduce a greater mix of uses to the area. And we also want to build infrastructure to support the freedom to choose either multiple modes of transportation. Next slide, please. So our land use and zoning chapter, we kick off with talking about density. This is a common measure of density in urban planning, which is FAR. That stands for Florida Area Ratio. FAR relates the square footage of a building to the square footage of the land on which it sits. The average FAR within the East End is 0.2, meaning that there is 5 times as much land as there is interior building square footage. The city's vision for this commercial area best matches the ULI's compact suburban district, which includes low spatial separation between buildings, strong pedestrian orientation, and a good choice in transit modes. The ULI recommends an FAR for 2.5 for these districts, and this kind of matches up with the adopted revitalization district's goal of achieving 3.0 FAR or higher densities. In terms of zoning, within the East End right now, we have M1 light industrial, B3 general business, T1 transitional, and then just wanted to call out those adjacent residential zones because they're important too. And those are RM multifamily residential, R1B medium density residential as well. Next slide, please. And again, you can see that in our existing zoning and land use map here, or existing zoning map. You see the gray is the M1 light industrial, the orange is the general business, B3, and then a little bit of transitional over by Hillwood. Next slide, please. Looking at our existing land use map, you see again in gray, light industry, that's the Kuhn site, as well as public storage over there. In the middle, we have the shopping center, which is Eden Center. Also a little bit of shopping center space along Wilson, neighbor by the BJ site, which we count as individual retail, as well as 24-hour fitness also counted as individual retail. Next slide, please. So this is our proposed land use map. Just want to introduce a few concepts that you can find in this map. Here we're introducing residential uses into the POA. We're looking at mixed use infill along Wilson and Roosevelt. We're looking at new spaces, or public green spaces. We are encouraging a 15% tree canopy coverage once again. We're introducing office and retail into the area. We're looking at expanding neighborhood transitional zoning. And finally, we're looking to adjust that Fairfax boundary line to rejoin the excluded parcel. And of course, we're looking to amend the zoning code to allow for special exception through M1 light industry. Next slide, please. So this chapter gets into also our different nodes. And I just want to begin with node 0, which is green space and open spaces. And that comprises the entire POA. So here we're looking at walkable streets, plazas and public areas, spaces for children to play, and looking at rethinking the existing Oakwood Cemetery as an opportunity for green space. Next slide, please. Node 1 is 24-hour fitness in the Coon site. Here we see great potential for a town center style redevelopment where citizens and visitors alike can gather and connect with the community. We see this as a welcoming feature into the area, a gateway feature, if you will, with walkable streets, active street-facing retail, and opportunity for residential or office. Next slide, please. Node 2 is Eden Center. Here we want to focus on preserving core existing structures, perhaps facade upgrades in the center, also looking at permanent ground level public spaces, infill development to create active edges. That infill development could include residential and retail mixed use, or even senior housing for aging in place, or a hotel that could cater towards Eden Center. And again, that would be infill development along the edges, ultimately working to keep Eden Center where it's at and preserve it and strengthen it. Also looking at constructing some structured parking at the Eden Center site. Next slide, please. Node 3 is east of Roosevelt Boulevard. Here we want to look at consolidating properties, infill again along Wilson Boulevard, incorporating some neighborhood serving retail with that, something similar to Westover, which you see below, maybe even a park similar to Mr. Brown's, which you see below as well, maybe utilizing that green space at the front of BJ's, which currently right now is mostly parking, and also exploring the opportunity for an outdoor food hall and market. Next slide, please. Now getting into economic development, this chapter begins with looking at existing commercial uses. Of course, Eden Center is the biggest commercial use, standing at over 15 acres, and it houses 125 retailers. In 2019, it was reported that 700 jobs exist in the East End, which is huge. This chapter also touches again on that history of Eden Center that we discussed previously. Next slide, please. This chapter includes recent property investments. So here we have the 24-hour fitness site. We also have the Good Fortune grocery store in Eden Center, and then the neighboring apartment building, Falls Green. It highlights land values and taxes. Back in 2020, Eden Center paid $1.3 million in taxes, and then other East End businesses provided a combined tax revenue of over $2.5 million. Next slide, please. The strategies explored in economic development include the following: enhancing placemaking efforts, investing in infrastructure, protecting and enhancing existing buildings, repurposing and exploring infill for underutilized parking lots, food programming and marketing, encouraging complementary uses and spaces, legacy business preservation programs, building economic resilience, and ultimately limiting the displacement of small businesses. Next slide, please. So this is chapter 5, our character and urban design chapter. It kicks off by talking about streetscape standards, and in an effort to really re-engage people with the streets to create a welcoming, walkable realm in the East End, we're looking to apply the city's streetscape standards of 20 feet along Broad, Wilson, and Roosevelt. This would provide room for street trees and outdoor dining, benches, bike racks. This could be done as part of redevelopment projects or through the CIP process. We're also looking to create walkable blocks. We want to break up those blocks in the event of a redone street grid with block lengths at a maximum of 400 feet, because this really ensures a quality walking environment. We also want to look at new connecting streets, frequent safe crossings, and again, breaking up those mega blocks. Another idea that's explored is narrowing Wilson Boulevard. Here we would remove one lane in one direction in an effort to rededicate space to cycle lanes and sidewalks. Also looking at that infill redevelopment once again. Next slide, please. reiterating the 20-foot building setbacks along Wilson, Broad Street, and Roosevelt with our site design strategies. Here we're also planning ahead for parks and plazas and minor streets. This is echoed below, looking at that year-round public square at Eden Center, pocket parks and parklets along the sidewalks. Looking at architecture, we want to have welcoming ground floor storefronts and outdoor seating. This is seen in an image to the right. Also looking at street-facing balconies and active rooftops, and looking to integrate Asian, particularly Vietnamese architectural stylings into the Eden Center if reinvestment occurs there. Next slide, please. Moving into gateway strategies, the city's adopted streetscape standards identifies the East End as a gateway into Falls Church. So we really want to lean into that and look at branding and unique signage for this area, public art. Moving into public art, we have explored the idea of mural festivals happening in the area to really jumpstart that effort, similar to what is done in Virginia Beach and even Washington, D.C. They have very successful mural festivals every year in NOMA. Looking at incorporating art on the side of the Fairfax Water Tower. Another strategy that we include in urban design is also creative placemaking. So really encouraging Eden Center's public square to host festivals and markets, performances, cultural celebrations, and holiday events. Finally, wayfinding, we're looking to incorporate Vietnamese on the street signs around the Eden Center area, and also just incorporating our now city standard wayfinding signage as the area redevelops, especially in the event that we have a town center style development as a gateway feature. Next slide, please. All right, chapter 6, getting into our transportation chapter. This chapter really begins with exploring existing conditions with the East End, very challenging conditions, and really puts an emphasis on the fact that this area exists as an auto-centric area right now. Some of the current obstacles that we look at are, again, those long block lengths, wide streets, narrow sidewalks, unsafe crossings, a lack of bicycle infrastructure, expansive parking lots, and you can see some of the existing conditions off to the right. We have a photo of East Broad, a photo of Wilson, and a photo of Roosevelt. The chapter highlights upcoming projects, again, that Fairfax County Ring Road, also the BRT and Vision Route 7. And the chapter highlights a study that happened in the area by Nelson Nygaard, the East End Transportation Study. Next slide, please. So two of these images right here are actually from that Nelson Nygaard study. And I think they do a good job of showing what the area could be. So to the left, we have the proposed street network map, and this is part of their recommendations for a future mobility network in the area. To the right, we have a image of a neighborhood main street, which includes buffered bike lanes, parking lanes, street trees, all of that good stuff. Next slide, please. All right, and the study includes the use of a mixed-use development MXD model analysis to understand auto demand in the area. You can see this analysis in the images below the charts. And ultimately what it's looking to do is exemplify that land use planning is a transportation planning strategy. So you have that base where we're at right now, and then we have a scenario in 2045 with no build, and then a scenario in 2045 with a build out. If the area were to develop, what would auto use look like? I just want to read off this great quote from Commissioner Rob Puentes really quick to kind of show what we're aiming to do in the area with getting that car usage down. The state estimates that the traffic volume dropped by a remarkable 9.3% from 2000 to 2019. We're seeing more than 50,000 fewer vehicles each day, and that's what we want to continue to encourage in the East End. Next slide, please. So some of the strategies we explore in this chapter are an improved street grid and greener paths, treating Wilson Boulevard as a great street, providing that bicycle infrastructure and parking, adding more bus stops, consolidating parking to an Eden Center garage, and then promoting Metro Rail first mile, last mile connections, and also new roads that would offer street parking. Next slide, please. All right, and this is our final chapter that we're highlighting in the presentation. This is our Environment and Utilities chapter. It begins by really depicting existing environmental conditions and their challenges within the East End. First, there's limited tree canopy coverage and landscaping. There's only 110 trees in the entire POA. In the entire city, we have a tree canopy that totals almost 50%. That's very impressive. As part of planning for this area, we want to up that canopy coverage. Also, stormwater issues. Right now, the area is dominated by impervious surfaces such as parking lots. 78% of POA 5 is impervious. This can increase the heat island effect in the area. It also increases opportunity for environmental degradation due to stormwater runoff. Next slide, please. So some of the strategies that we propose in this chapter really focus around two main themes. One is climate action and mitigation. So the themes here that we're looking at are those that will enhance sustainability and climate resilience as the East End develops, and those focus on expanding urban forestry, looking at urban agriculture in the area, what a great way to really enhance community as it develops in the East End, looking at stormwater best management practices, also looking at building and site design. So of course, encouraging LEED and all of that. Next slide, please. Also, another theme is infrastructure reliability. So as the area expands, perhaps as residents enter the area, as housing enters the area, we want to really look at offsite sewer capacity, continuing to coordinate with Fairfax Water as that population increases, undergrounding overhead wires through perhaps the CIP process, and then aiming for net zero in the area. Next slide, please. So now we're at community engagement. Our community engagement period that we have charted out is October to November. At the end of October, we're planning our second community meeting right now. That will be happening on October 29th. We're hoping to get some more details about that out soon. We're also looking to have a community pop-up at the farmers market mid-October, and then looking to undergo our boards and commissions review throughout those 2 months. So October of 2022 and November of 2022. We're looking for a December 2022 Planning Commission work session, number 4 for them, and then a City Council work session at the beginning of the year, your third one in January. And then we're looking for action from Planning Commission and City Council in February of 2023. I just want to note that with our community engagement period, we'll also have a survey going out maybe within the next week or so. We're working on finalizing that and getting it out. It would be posted to our project's webpage. There was a link for that at the beginning of this presentation. Next slide, please. So just want to leave you guys with our vision for the East End. Again, just going to read it off the slide. The East End is a cultural hub focused on the Eden Center. Transportation investments put people first by prioritizing connectivity and accessibility. Green spaces provide opportunities for community members to gather, recreate, or relax. Nearby housing affordability is preserved while new commercial and residential development occurs within the planning opportunity area. A green approach to infrastructure building and site design supports the environmental sustainability of the area for future generations. And that's all for me and my presentation. I'd like to open it up to Q&A and any feedback from council now. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for all the hard work that's gone into putting this together and for your thorough presentation this evening. Let's go ahead and open it up to questions or comments from council. I guess while we're waiting for others, I might just ask, has the owner of the Eden Center, I'm sure they have participated to some degree, were they aware of this meeting tonight as well?
They were participating throughout this process. They should be aware of the meeting tonight as well, yes.
And did they have any disagreement with what you prepared? In other words, are they fully on board with what is shown to date, or have you not engaged with them recently?
No, they seem to be fully, so I do feel like I should not say or speak for them on that, but they have been engaged throughout the process. In terms of where we're at, we need to send over the draft plan, so they have not read through the complete draft plan yet. So therefore, I feel like I should disclose that. It is available on our website. We're looking to have a pop-up in the POA. We haven't organized that within the Eden Center, so we are hoping to eventually connect with the POA property owners and stakeholders there to get a POA pop-up. But did want to note that that's not something that's included in this presentation, as we haven't made that connection yet.
I would just encourage you to fully engage with them, just because ultimate implementation is dependent on, them buying in. And if they do have comments, I think they're certainly worth noting and sharing with council and the rest. Let me go ahead and move over. Mr. Duncan, looks like you had a comment.
Yes, thank you. I think I'm going down the same road to start that you're speaking to. So this is really an interesting read. I enjoyed flipping through it last night. I tried to dive into the whole thing, but there's a lot of interesting stuff here, and it's clear that you're trying to walk a fine line between the two R words, redevelopment and revitalization. When we first brought this out to the community, there were some folks who live over there and some who have businesses in the center who were anxious, and I can tell that your language is trying to speak to that. The paragraph in the land use chapter 5:9, this plan is not meant to be used as a tool to force redevelopment of any property within the boundaries of the POA or elsewhere in the city. Then economic development, chapter 4, page 5, particular emphasis should be given to how new projects can support rather than displace existing small businesses. I think that's good, given the conditions that we find over there. At the same time, in the first chapter, introduction and background, there's a bullet point that says land use and zoning modify the future land use map to reflect the areas where redevelopment will occur. Specifically, the Eden Center, quote, might become ripe for redevelopment, which is true. I guess what I'm asking is that before we take it out to the pop-ups or whatever, just do a thorough top-to-bottom run through and try to make sure that wherever, you use words like preserve, enhance, strengthen, revitalize, not necessarily redevelop, which seems to be, the word that makes people anxious. It is interesting to note that while it's a very successful economic model over there, it is not per acre as productive as some of the other developments that we've done in town in more recent years, because the FAR is so low, which leads me to actually ask about whether this is an opportunity, based on what you heard tonight earlier, for us to ramp up the focus, which is here, but to ramp up the focus on access to this area and through this area for bicycles and pedestrians, but especially for bicycles. There are several pictures that pop up here and there of, I think, protected bike lanes that were talked about tonight. I guess I would like to know that we have really, applied ourselves to the possibilities that this end of town might have, especially connecting East Falls Church to the Eden Center. I mean, it's a straight shot down Roosevelt Boulevard, and it's a pretty wide road. Maybe there's some things that we could propose that would seem like they're cutting edge now, but by the time the revitalization actually happens, would seem, entirely reasonable. I would like, if we're going to push the envelope somewhere, I guess I would like to see us push the envelope here in that area. Finally, then, unrelated to all of that, somewhere in here, I can't quite find it, there was a discussion about the heritage, of course, and street naming, and somewhere I thought I saw that there was a suggestion to name one of the interior streets, maybe Saigon Boulevard or Street or whatever. I would ask that we not be too specific in entering that area. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a child of the Vietnam War era, and I don't associate positively with Saigon, which I don't think is even a city name anymore. And I don't want to go into delicate territory here, but when I go to the Eden Center, or before the Eden Center became the center of Vietnamese community in Northern Virginia and Clarendon, I spent a lot of time there. I had friends who lived around there. I think of enterprise and opportunity and adjectives like that would be good names for streets, as opposed to getting into the business of fighting, the Vietnam War all over again. Anyway, that's just a personal thought, and maybe others might or might not agree with that, but I personally would just ask that we not stipulate that as an idea at this stage. If it emerges, so be it. But my preference would be for something that spoke to the qualities of the people who live there, rather than, geography from a bygone era. Okay, thanks.
Ms. Conley?
Thanks, Mayor Charter. Emily, thank you for that thorough presentation and this report. You have a lot of good ideas in there. And I want to start with the things that I like. I love the idea to add Vietnamese language to the street signs. The idea that you have in there called legacy business preservation, is that a new thing in Falls Church? Have we done that before?
No, actually, this is a recommendation from one of our commissioners. He's done some work with the anti-displacement toolkit through his job, and that is a program that we found through the resources that he shared regarding the anti-displacement toolkit.
But we haven't done this in Falls Church yet.
No, we haven't.
Okay. So I think that's a good idea for some of the small businesses. I love that you mentioned including a mural on the water tower in the public art section. I think that's a great idea. I would strongly agree with Mr. Duncan about not naming Wilson Boulevard Saigon Boulevard. We discussed this the last time this came to us, and a few of us had concerns, and I was surprised to see that it was still in there. I think it's too politically charged, and as Mr. Duncan said, there's a lot of other ways you can honor the people there. So that's I would second him on that one. I think you should add in the history section that there's a new Virginia State Historic Marker there. That's not in there yet, which is related to immigration from Vietnam. As far as community engagement goes, you just mentioned you're trying to hold a pop-up at Eden Center, but it hasn't been set up yet?
So we haven't begun to engage with them about, we want to do something in the POA, and we have a couple of different locations in mind. They were our first, but that doesn't mean that they're feasible. We need to make sure they're on board. So it's in the staff report, but they haven't agreed to that. So we're also looking to maybe go to BJ's or 24-hour fitness.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're at with
Those
that.
were my thoughts. If you can't do Eden Center, there's 24-hour fitness, there's BJ's, there are the apartment buildings that are nearby. I would think that Eden Center would be happy to host something like that. Alan Frank seems like someone who would be more than willing to have people there to be able to answer questions and ask questions. You mentioned that we should consider Oakwood Cemetery as an opportunity for green space. And that's another one of those. I just wonder how it's a cemetery. How does that count as green space, and is that politically charged as well?
That's something that was discussed at the community meeting. We found that a lot of people like to walk through for their daily walks. It's, I believe, 11 acres in total. So just really looking at creating like a comfortable green space there. So appropriate lighting where people are safe, and making sure conditions of the cemetery are up to par where people can walk and enjoy that.
Okay. I would just be careful about that too, especially for those whose relatives are buried there. They may not want it to be like a more public green space. As far as green in the neighborhood, can we start asking the neighborhood tree program to put trees in now rather than wait? Are there spaces in that area that our neighborhood tree people could start to focus on to put some trees in now because it's got such a low tree canopy?
That is something that I could circle back to you on. I can do a little bit more research into that potential and talk to Charles Prince.
Okay, I just think that that might be enough. I don't think they've ever done neighborhood tree program over there, and there may be some spots where it could happen quickly as opposed to waiting. And then I have a couple typos and things. I'm not going to say them all out loud. I'll just email them to you. They're just little things here and there. But generally, really good job on this. It's definitely an area that's ripe for change, and I think this captures some good ways to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Other comments, Ms. Hardy?
Thank you. Nice work, Emily. I could tell that you guys have spent a lot of time on this. I appreciate how thorough the presentation was tonight. Like Phil, I could see that we tried to take the language around redevelopment out, but let's just make sure that it's consistent, especially around the Eden Center, and talk about kind of reinvigorating kind of what we want to do there, just so we don't create unnecessary concern. I won't duplicate what others have said because I know it's late, but my main comment was around the community input part of it, and language that we're using is on page 9 of the slides, and it's throughout various parts of the chapter 2 on the concepts, is the term return to regional prominence. For me, that reminded me of Making America Great Again, because I do think that many people think that the Eden Center and the East End is pretty great right now, and there are ways to enhance it. So I would ask that we actually revise that language, because that was the first reference that came to mind for me. On the community input part, I know that Wyatt has shared with us the timeline for T-zones, and so I just want us to put the two timelines together and make sure we are not confusing people or burdening and confusing people with multiple community input and pop-ups around the same time period. So let's just be thoughtful of, if they're both Q4, early Q1 timeframes, is it too much for people to keep track of? So let's just be deliberate about what we're getting input on so we get really good feedback on both projects. But otherwise, that's it for tonight for me. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for flagging that about T-zones. We can work on that.
Any other comments? All right, quick comment from Phil.
Just one other thing, Emily, I'm reading on chapter 1:8, introduction and background. I feel Ed Henderson is looking over my shoulder when I'm reading the section about Mr. Foote and how that family owned, everything that is the East End at a time, and somehow miraculously, his will stipulated this, and that didn't happen, and heirs died, and property owners could not keep up with taxes. I don't know, that sniffs like a sanitized version of what really happened. I just want to make sure that we run that by the Tenor Hill Heritage Foundation, experts on the history of Falls Church in the first half of the 20th century, to make sure that, that we're satisfied that tells the full story of what really occurred there. I know it's not on the critical path of the whole document, but, it's an interesting history, and I just want to make sure that it's not been cleansed.
All right, thank you. Okay, unless there's any other comments on this, let's move on to the next item on the work session, which is the compensation issue. Mr. Shields, does it go to you?
So maybe Ms. McCoskey wants to just give an overview of kind of what the state laws are with respect to compensation for city council members, and then we can go from there.
Yes, a few members of council have requested that we put forward an ordinance that will increase the compensation for council members. The last time this was done, I believe, was 2007. So the city's population right now, according to the Weldon Cooper Center, is still less than 15,000, and that allows salaries for council members and for the mayor to be set at certain rates. So the council member salaries can be 11,000, and the mayor's salary 11,500. So what we've done is prepared an ordinance that would adjust the council salaries to those amounts. because of the way these matters are to be scheduled, first it has to be done before an election at which council members are elected, and that doesn't happen until November 2023. And then it has to wait, and it becomes effective as of the following July 1st. So this ordinance would not become effective until July 1st, 2024. That's when the changes in the salaries would take place. But I think the understanding was that to put these amounts, to set the salaries at as much as they can possibly be so that it's more available to everyone to apply and to serve as a council member because they would get the reasonable compensation. Currently, we also do have a blank line in the ordinance. Council members are eligible to receive the same benefits that the employees receive, and we would be looking into including a line that would allow you all to receive the benefits of employees. And that's just something we haven't worked with yet enough with the human resources people on to see exactly what that would be and how much it would cost.
All right.
It's a ways off, though.
Ms. Conley?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
The 11,000 is limited because our population is under 15,000.
Correct.
Suppose our population goes up. Did I miss you saying that?
You would need to act, but if our population went up to over 15,000, then there's another $500 that could be added to those amounts. So it's not a huge increase. In addition, when I spoke with the people at the Weldon Cooper Center who do have the official population numbers, they said they look at these numbers once a year. They look at them in July, and their number doesn't come out till shortly after January. So that's when, if you wanted to wait and see what happened to the population at that point, you could wait and do your ordinance at that time. You just have to have it 4 months before the before the November election.
Is there a way to write the ordinance such that if the population is below 15,000, it's this amount. If it increases above 15,000, it's this amount?
I would have to look at that. I think that might be somewhat difficult. I think that it contemplates that you all take the action to set the amount, the actual amount of the salary, and not just set it at the maximum ever allowed by law. But I will look at that and see if there's a way to do that.
Other comments? Ms. Hardy?
Thank you. So going back to the benefits part, so I'm hearing you say, Carol, that it's not prohibited by the General Assembly to offer benefits.
That's correct. In fact, it's specifically allowed that council members or that members of governing bodies can be granted the same benefits that are also granted to the employees of the locality.
Got it. Because I read in the staff report that it depends on our administrative regulations. And so internally, do we have any rules prohibiting it?
There are just and I don't think it was intentional, but it just relates to part-time employees versus full-time employees. And so that's where it comes in. And so I think we ought to have some discussion on that and kind of work through the details.
Okay. And to your knowledge, are there others in the region that offer their electeds benefits, or would we be one of the first?
Let's do some research on that, and we could find some
I
conflicts.
think there are others.
Arlington
I believe so.
does, yeah, I believe.
Okay. So I know obviously talking about voting for our own salaries makes it pretty uncomfortable and weird, but I guess I support this. I think the intent of being able to make it easier for a wider array of candidates to take on this job really resonates with me. So I would support this. I think obviously 11,000 is still not enough to live on in this area, and so it nearly doesn't go far enough, but that is a General Assembly issue. I think at the end of the day, if we want the best representative council members to best serve the city, we really have to pay people to do it. So I would support this change and look forward to getting an ordinance up and to be voted on.
All right, any other comments? Okay, let's move on to the next item then.
I just would say I'm supportive of further exploring this and would hope to vote for it in the end.
Mr. Schneider has a comment. Mr. Schneider?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, I think a lot of public input ought to be received on all elements of this. Going forward, raising our salaries when we're going into a recession or in a recession where people may be losing jobs and where there are other challenges, people might rightly raise some serious questions about that. So I am not supportive of this, certainly at this point, and would urge that we get a lot more citizen input before we give this any further consideration. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hiscott?
I'm definitely in favor of moving it forward. I've had lots of discussions with people having run for city council twice in the last 2 years, and spoken with a lot of people who are also interested in running, and those who may not have full-time employment or full-time highly paid employment. And I think compensation and potential benefits do play a role in those who are able to run for city council. I feel very strongly about that and have received a lot of feedback about that. I, for one, would like to have an option of benefits for city council members because it makes quite an impact. And I'd like to have our elected leaders as representative as possible. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Leon?
This is about access to democracy for me. So every single person in any district, particularly this city, should have the opportunity to serve without it costing their family. So I do think that if we have an opportunity to provide, to benefits, if we're capped by regulation on the salaries, I think the principle of access to that democracy, can offset the political awkwardness that's involved with raising your salary. So I just want to go on the record to say that that's really the intent with this, right? And given the regs, there's only so much you can increase it by. I think the delta here and the opportunity for the city to make, very progressive approaches to this on the benefit side and seeing where we can kind of lead there. Thank you.
All right. Let's keep going then. The last item on the work session. Mr. Shields?
So what we have before council is an amendment to Chapter 16 of the City Code to add an e-summons fee in the amount of $5 per summons. So if a moving violation is issued by a city police officer and then it goes through the court process, there would be a fee of $5 attached to that summons. The purpose of that fee is to defray a portion of the cost to administer a new system of issuing traffic citations by electronic device rather than by paper. The revenue anticipated from this summons, $5 per summons, is $3,500. The total cost to implement a new e-ticketing software is going to be in the neighborhood of about $100,000. So it is not intended to cover all the costs. It is a fee that Arlington County currently assesses, and so the clerk has actually requested that the city consider this, partly just for the ease of administration on their end, so because they have a hard time keeping track of which are false church violations versus Arlington violations, and they'd like to administer them the same, which this ordinance would allow us to do. That is, I think, kind of the key details of what is being requested, and be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions, comments? So, just so I understand, you want to charge $5 for the people who are already using the electronic system to implement the electronic system. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Well, we currently issue paper summonses. So if you get a ticket, you get a piece of paper with, the carbon copy. We're converting to an e-summons, so there will not be a piece of paper. It'll be sent to you by electronic device, and then you can pay the ticket, and the whole thing kind of can get administered on your phone. And it is easier kind of on the back end to handle the paperwork of it and it is, I believe, easier for the person who's received the violation. That may not be answering your question exactly. I'm just giving a little bit more background.
I got that part, which
Okay.
makes sense. I'm just trying to figure out who pays. Is there, everybody's going to switch over, or is there going to be some people who get paper tickets and some people get electronic tickets?
I think once we, I
I want electronic one. Okay,
I
here, we just zapped it to you. Oh, give me the paper one. I don't have the computer thing or whatever, the phone
Right.
setup.
oh, I see what you're saying.
But I think that the plan is to move everybody to the electronic summons. The fee will apply to everyone who's ordered to pay costs. So it doesn't apply just because you receive a summons, but if the court orders, after a hearing that you have to pay costs, that fee would be added as part of the costs.
So that's if you
court costs.
challenge your ticket. If you don't challenge your ticket, you pay your ticket, you don't pay costs.
That's correct.
Got it. So that's if
That's-
you
that's
go
an
to
important
court and you
distinction, right?
lose, then you're paying costs, basically. That's who it would be added to.
Right.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Okay. Let's keep going then. Is there any business not on the agenda that we haven't covered just yet? Mrs. Connolly?
I have two things.
Yeah.
Okay, number one is at the VML conference next week, there's a Women in Government luncheon that is an extra fee. Do the women at the conference want to attend the Women in Government luncheon on Monday?
I didn't understand. I just saw that it seemed like an invite-only list. And
It's we just have to purchase tickets, and Celeste said she would order us tickets if we want to go to that luncheon.
I do.
I'd be interested. Yeah.
Letty?
4 yeses.
Okay, 4 yeses, thank you. And the second thing is just related to a move the Historic Commission took last week about adding a plaque to the community center. There's going to be a new plaque added to the community center, Veterans Recognition, and it's going to be a recognition of 4 George Mason High School alumni graduates who died serving our country prior to and during the Vietnam War. So there are 4 men's names that the Historical Commission voted on to add that plaque. The Bronze Company is working on the plaque, and it will hopefully be ready to be unveiled on Veterans Day this year. So the Historical Commission asked if that would be shared with all of council so that you're aware that that is going to happen.
Thank you. Ms. Hardy?
Just a quick thing. The community cleanup that I had proposed that we all do as a council this Saturday is getting rained out, so it's moved to the 22nd. So if you are available to help pick up trash, I will get a street assigned to us.
All right. Other Mr. Duncan?
Can I just report briefly on a conversation I had with Jeff Weaver, who, as you all know, is one of the destination small business owners here in town, Victory Comics, which was broken into and lost $100,000 or so worth of inventory. He was pleased to report to me when I drove by there the other day that the police have done a fine job, and they've actually, working with other regional bodies, law enforcement bodies, recovered nearly all of the inventory that was lost, stolen. And anyway, he just expressed satisfaction and happiness with the quality of service he got from our police department, and I just wanted to pass that along to those folks who are in the ranks there to let them know that their work's appreciated by him and us too.
Thank you. Other comments from anyone? Questions, requests? Okay, let's keep going. Minutes, Mr. Duncan?
Madam Clerk, line 104. Mr. Shields, I think, said it was pending final review of the options. Line 132, she said she would like to explore the merits of single-family home versus townhome purchases. And I think at the end on line 228, the mayor is describing the city being in a chain of title for the property, not being a chain of title, not being a lawyer, but I think that's in a chain. So with those three, otherwise everything was fine. I move approval of the minutes of the meeting of Monday, July the 11th, 2022.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
2 seconds, so one of you is the second, the other, let's say.
Debbie
Ms.
can be,
Debbie's the second, Mary Beth's the third. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
abstentions, the ayes have it.
Thanks for reading him, Phil. So closely.
Anything else anybody wants to say? Let me ask you, tomorrow it's 9 o'clock is our Ask Council, and that's in the Dogwood Room?
Yes, in the Dogwood Room, and it's in person.
In person, okay. And again, next week we have VML. Thank you for helping us get organized for that, Madam Clerk. And unless there's anything else anybody wants to say, let's
Is there
go.
a quorum in person for that meeting in the morning?
There's no virtual link for
There's no
that.
no virtual option, even if there was a quorum.
Yeah, it's a office hours concept.
Okay. Just thought I'd ask.
All right.
Is the mayor's meeting in person or virtual?
It's
not
canceled.
happening.
Oh, it's canceled.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? We ready to adjourn? Going once?
In honor of the city attorney who is leaving us, I move we adjourn.
All right, let's do it.
Thank you, Carol.
We are adjourned. Carol, you want to get a picture in front of with all of us? I don't know if anybody can send it on to the newspaper, maybe. Yeah, let's do it.
Click draw.
This is for Carol's mother.
He didn't want to be associated with all this money grubbing.